In the heat of battle, the role of the healer has no substitutes. They are the indispensable support of any group entering monster-filled dungeons, providing backup from the rear. Healing arts and tactical magic sustain comrades while a young boy cherishes dreams of adventure. This path signifies the pinnacle of service and mastery. He sharply raises his gaze to the mentor with wide, hopeful eyes and fervently declares that he dreams of becoming a first-class healer like her. She hears his aspiration but stops him with words and emphasizes, first, he needs to remember only one single, vital lesson. When she directs a fiery sphere of magical energy, she prepares to engrave the most important secret of their craft, but wisdom still lingers in the air as the memory dissolves. Many years pass and the camera switches to the great royal country Bala, where the Travelers Guild stands like a beacon for those who seek luck and glory. The boy, still quite young, named Fool, found himself far from the fame he once dreamed of. He frantically scrubs the wooden floors of the guild while the senior guild member growls at him, demanding he work even harder. He stops his exhausting work, his face freezes with quiet, muted melancholy. No matter how many years he chased the dream, he was never called to a mission. He remained an F-rank healer and a miserable house servant of the guild. Continuing his worthless, exhausting tasks, he secretly reproaches himself for the lack of progress and wonders if he will ever get the practice needed for a promotion, but the sudden commotion at the entrance interrupts his thoughts. Heavy doors burst open with a rumble, announcing the return of the legendary S-rank party led by the mighty warrior Darren. His appearance sweeps through the hall like a wave of admiring excitement. He meets the young man with a rough, mocking slap on the back and says that the mop still suits his role no matter how much time has passed. The bewildered boy cannot react to this sharp and insolent familiarity. His body stiffens under the heavy palm of the warrior. An armed warrior in armor continues to mock, laughing loudly, explaining to the fools that they should surrender and stop dreaming of travels. Let them take up a new profession, become cleaners, and work full-time. He turns to his companions as if expecting support and looks down on them. A self-satisfied, condescending smile stays on his face as he asks if they think the same. Watching him laugh, the young master only weakly forces out a strained chuckle in response. He lowers his eyes and tries to comprehend how much their relationship has changed since their very first meeting. The former warmth has disappeared. No, he is enveloped by a cold, sharp disdain that he cannot digest. He recalls how many years ago everything looked completely different. It was this man who first extended his hand to him when he was just a shaky novice adventurer. Once the warrior's gaze flickered with camaraderie and hope, but now that is gone. In memories, it was this very man who gave permission to take into the guild someone as inexperienced as Fool, despite the fact that at that time the guild was primarily looking only for healers. Even seeing how obviously Fool had no talent, he still accepted him into the community, and someday this act filled the boy with boundless gratitude. The warrior contemptuously cuts off Fool as soon as he tries to speak and asks about their newest mission. He says that recently near the kingdom of Baal they found another new dungeon, but immediately adds, all these high-level and important matters have nothing to do with such an ordinary craftsman as he is. His voice sharply intensifies as he puts Fool in his place and reminds him, he's only allowed the simplest single-tier healing magic that proves completely powerless for an elite team like theirs. Coldly and bluntly he cuts off, they do not need dead weight, someone who cannot pull their weight in battle. After that, Fool remains standing in silence, swallowing the usual public bitterness of these humiliations. Like the weight of sacks of stones, the warrior's words fall on him, but he does not break. He looks ahead with quiet, stubborn focus in his eyes. He decides to endure any misfortune and any insult until the day comes when he can finally prove his own dignity and set out on the path of a true healer, no matter how long it takes. He freezes in place as the meaning of the words reaches him, his eyes widen in shock. Darren's voice sounds cold and final. He rejects the order again, repeating the refusal as if the first time was not clear enough. The young healer barely manages to comprehend how sharply this turned his fate to a new state. Trying to hold his place, he stammers in a trembling voice and utters a plea, acknowledging his low rank but reminding the leader about the continuous healing he provided within the guild. His phrase breaks off as Darren introduces the one who will take his place. Ina, an honorable S-rank healer already ready to accept his former position. The weight of this situation crushes him on the spot, and the mocking laughter of classmates rings in his ears. He is seized by a nauseating jolt of realization. All his efforts were never appreciated. In their eyes, he was just a public spectacle, merely jokes they tolerated until they no longer needed him. While his world falls apart, he resists and tries to prove his own worth. Supposedly, he will be needed on the campaign. but Darren only snorts contemptuously, grabs him by the shoulder, and orders him to face the truth, calling his belief in his own strength a complete illusion. The confrontation sharply escalates. Darren lunges forward, and his face twists into an openly contemptuous expression. He shouts thunderously that no matter how hard the boy tries, he will never become anything more than an ordinary craftsman, a simple servant pretending to belong to the elite party. With a sharp shove, he falls flat on the floor, and his shabby belongings clatter and scatter around. The physical rejection is as painful as the words, and he lies in the dirt, humiliated and broken. He crouches to the ground, sinking heavily, and listens until the finishing blow becomes the last. Darren makes it clear without any doubt. At first, there was no place for him in the guild. He dismisses years of service as a simple misunderstanding on the part of the guys. He freezes, sharply raises his head, and in shock jumps up because realization finally hits like a wave. He endured years of senseless oppression, believed in the person who now mocks his misfortune. Doran tears up the last order, roars the command, immediately leave the guild territory. He holds his position, and his voice does not tremble, although betrayal cuts deep. He relays to Darren that he is leaving and adds, if the leader has something to say, let him speak directly. Darren's misunderstanding only fuels his stubbornness. He is already tired of explaining himself every time to someone who does not want to listen. Forgetting about the guild, he sharply turns his back and rushes off. He speeds away, and his heart pounds as if both anger and relief are boiling inside it. He throws a shout into the void, saying that that's it, he no longer has dealings with a place that despises him to the edge. The adrenaline fades as he slowly combs through the outskirts of the kingdom, and a heavy sigh escapes on its own. He understands that he acted impulsively, but that does not erase logic. Without the guild, there is nothing left for him in this city. He runs through options in his head, realizing he needs to camp somewhere for the night. The thought that he might encounter high-ranking members of his former guild sparks urgency in his chest. He forces himself to distance from the past, to break away from it. He is drawn to wander further, and eventually he reaches the chasm of the dungeon entrance, nestled near the very borders of the kingdom. This is an unranked territory, dangerous, unknown land where the true challenge reveals itself only when the monsters hidden inside come out to meet you. The dungeon is a treacherous labyrinth, gnawed from within by monstrous power, and in each of them, in the farthest heart, hides a mighty boss. For a traveler, the road to wealth and recognition passes through these depths. One must break through, defeat the opponent, and claim the reward distributed by the crown. Although for such a trial, a balanced group of 4 is usually assembled, solo excursions happen extremely rarely. They are allowed only for the most elite warriors or knights. The idea that a single healer would dare to plunge into these depths has no precedent at all. For a person with such a limited skill set, it looks like a suicidal stunt. He silently drinks in the darkness with his gaze, acknowledging his limits as a healer. He can heal only one soul at a time. Just as he reaches to turn away, unmistakable sounds of a desperate struggle come from the depths, pulling him there where he was supposed to stay away. He abruptly stops, and his eyes widen as soon as he recognizes where the commotion came from. Before him is a young girl, the Beast King, trapped in a hopeless fight. She looks completely exhausted. Her breathing is broken into ragged, hoarse gasps, and she leans on her sword with her whole body. Pain is clearly readable on her face. Her hair is matted with sweat, but her hand does not weaken. She holds the weapon firmly. Even when she groans in agony, her spirit does not give up. The girl does not take her eyes off the danger ahead. Looming in the darkness of the cave is a giant lizardman armored in plates. He holds his position, shield raised high, and freezes, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. She prepares for the next clash in the damp air. The tension thickens, and the blade seems to cut her. He rushes to the fallen girl, the Beast Queen, and his voice immediately trembles with concern. He asks if she is okay. Startled by his sudden appearance, she sharply demands, "Who is he?" Nearby, a defeated glare bristles with the shine of threats, a mighty lizardman, and this immediately reveals. This dungeon is much more dangerous than it seems at first glance, at least at the level of ranking among the lowest. Noticing the monster preparing to strike, he lets out a shout and warns her, "Hold on, be careful." While he quickly assesses the situation, it dawns on him that her equipment only rates at C rank or lower, so appearing here alone for the difficulty of this dungeon looks like a suicidal disorder. The animal lunges forward sharply, and he grabs it, pulling it back, wrenching it away from a deadly blow. She orders him to stay away, but he ignores her protest. He presses her to run, because in such a state she clearly cannot withstand a fight. She does not retreat, stands firm in place, and her gaze flares with determination. She declares she will not budge or flee until she fulfills her dream to become a first-class adventuress, making him freeze at her unwavering spirit. With a defiant cry, she bursts again into the thick of the battle, her delicate figure darkening against the backdrop of the looming threat. He watches silently, captivated by her stubborn determination as she faces the monster once more. A sharp clang of woven metal rings out. She charges the beast head-on, taking the blow squarely. Her face is a solid knot of rage and stubborn focus. She will not retreat a step under the pressure of the force pressing from all sides. While he watches her struggle, a sudden realization washes over him. He involuntarily lowers his gaze and freezes in deep thought. Her words touched something important. From the depths of his memory rose what he had long tried to suppress. His hand clenches into a tight fist as the truth finally surfaces in his memory. He recalls, once he himself passionately dreamed of becoming a first-class doctor, and now with a heavy heart he does not understand why he allowed himself to reject it. He stood aloneth, burden of the labels he had imposed on himself pressed on his shoulders. For a long time he reconciled himself to the role of an ordinary jack-of-all-trades, convincing himself that he could not rise higher, and almost gave up, slipping into dull mediocrity. A piercing scream broke his thoughts and sharply threw him back into the harsh reality of the dungeon. He gasped sharply. The echo of someone else's pain reverberated through the stone corridors, and every sound mercilessly indicated the danger that was already unfolding very close, just beyond his field of vision. Memories of his training flooded his mind. A true healer never abandons those in need and always fully trusts his comrades. When he saw the blood of the best king girl spilling on the ground, determination ignited within him, and he could no longer stand idly by while someone suffered. Stepping forward, he launched a steady rhythm of the spell and addressed the winds to heal the girl's deadly, painful wounds. She froze in stunned silence. Her eyes widened as the soft glow of magic began to stitch her body back together from. With a wild scream, he pours his entire soul into the spell. His palms flare with bright light and cut through the darkness of the cave. The air rings with the tension of his magic, revealing the power he has held within himself for so long. When the worst pain began to subside, the girl gasped sharply in shock. She could hardly believe that the one she had considered an ordinary random witness could actually heal. She wanted to thank him and asked him to stop because she already felt better, but he did not take his eyes off his work. He firmly held his position and stubbornly refused to stop the spell at her request, even when the threat still hung in the air. His stance no longer resembled a defeated master repairman. Now it was the steady support of a warrior, ignited by battle. He stared straight into her eyes. He solemnly vowed he would continue to sing and spread his healing light until her battle was won. The girl could only freeze in shocked silence, studying the unwavering determination of the young man before her. He admitted his only contribution was healing, but the girl, the queen of beasts, instantly stopped him with a warning about danger. She declared that such thoughtless waste of mana would inevitably undermine him and boldly questioned his endurance. Without taking his eyes off her, he stubbornly asked if she still had the strength to fight. When she confirmed, he promised he would use every drop of his own power to be by her side, and he fiercely pushed her to take down that monster while they both plunged back into the fresh battle. She withdrew into herself, preparing for what she considered a long and exhausting struggle, and warned, if he reached the limit and collapsed, he should not blame her. He only nodded resolutely. When she lunged forward, he launched an unceasing chain of spells. She's voice held steadily to a single rhythm of restorative magic, enveloping her in a protective glow. Magic relentlessly rose in waves, immediately sealing wounds as soon as they appeared. The warrior delivered a series of devastating blows. Her blade found its mark each time, biting deep into the enemy's scaly skin. The giant creature finally collapsed, and its body splattered dark, hot life fluid onto the ground as it stood over the fallen enemy. After that, a suffocating silence fell on that felt like the breaking of life itself in a struggle where just a moment ago it was decided, to live or to die. She lowered her gaze to her own hands and froze in shock, as if she could not believe she had accomplished such a feat by her own strength alone. Nearby, the young healer leaned on his staff. His face was pale from exhaustion, but the corners of his lips trembled with a barely noticeable, victorious smile. The reality of victory finally reached her, and she exploded with joy, bursting into the air with a cry of pure triumph. He watched silently, feeling a quiet pride, and with a weary voice threw a brief greeting for having finally brought down the beast. A radiant, grateful smile slid across her face as she looked at him again, and she honestly said, "The victory is theirs together." She realized that without his unwavering support, everything would have turned out differently. She expresses sincere gratitude. The voice sounds even and clear as the tension of battle just fades away. The young healer raises his gaze and his eyes open wide from the unexpected, heartfelt recognition of his efforts. A warm, sincere smile spreads across her face and her gaze softens as she stops her eyes on him. The cruelty of the fight that had just raged disappears, replaced by deep relief and gratitude to the boy who did not let her fall. She realizes how much effort he put in while she was watching her own strength, and notices that throughout the entire clash he was constantly muttering something. She anxiously asks if his stock of technique has burned out after such a harsh and prolonged display of magic, and he only responds with a light smile, looking as if nothing is wrong. He nervously runs his hand over the back of his head and, barely restraining his shame, admits that he is fine. After that, he blurts out an unexpected truth. No matter how much magic he spends, his mana pool shows no decrease. Her words come out in a jumble, and she freezes, stunned, looking at him, trying to comprehend what she just heard, the impossible. Inside her suddenly flare curiosity and respect. She moves closer and asks his name. He hesitates for a moment before naming himself. Fool. This name throws her off balance. Her gaze immediately changes shade, and a soft confusion mixed with curiosity appears on her face. She quickly recovers and, bursting out with a loud, charged voice, introduces herself, Cecilia. With a decisive leap forward and a broad smile, she makes an offer that turns life upside down, asking to join her and create an official team for adventures. He only blinks in response, stunned by the sudden turn of events. She leans forward, sparkling eyes flashing, and her voice trembles with excitement as she suggests they form a team and throw a party together. The young healer loses his train of thought, his cheeks flush with heat as he begins to stammer a confused question, trying to understand if she really intends to join forces with him. Noticing his hesitation, she clearly explains, they are both themselves, and that is why it is a perfect match. She confidently lays everything out. As a warrior, she must be where the front is, and he, as a healer, should stay in the rear and remain safe. Her energy presses on him so much that it is hard to keep up with her relentless pace. Inside, he doubts himself because he fears he is only capable of basic healing magic, but she still does not let go. She continues to demand answers from him, and her enthusiasm gradually fades. Molodik holds his breath and stops, weighing the offer. The idea of a traveler nearby seems truly useful. But something troubles him. An intrusive question creeps into his mind, and he asks why such a skilled warrior as she is ventures alone into this dangerous dungeon. Her face dims for a moment as soon as she looks away. Her fingers twitch nervously as if they can't find a place. A heavy sigh breaks the silence. She utters the painful truth. She was expelled from the previous guild. This confession throws him off balance for a second. He cannot say a word. She tears up those bitter memories in her mind when her former comrades branded her weak and worthless, mocked her, cut her off from every mission, and abandoned her until she remembered rumors about a new dungeon nearby and decided to go seek her luck elsewhere. In her gaze, determination flashes convulsively as she lays out her desperate plan before every Anito proved they are wrong. She believed that if she herself could defeat the dungeon boss, she would finally earn the respect that had been constantly denied to her. In an unexpected turn, he quietly pulls the corners of his lips into a small, sympathetic smile and admits he was also expelled from his own guild. She freezes in shock, and the heaviness of their shared history hangs in the air, underscored by a harsh truth. Beast folk, despite their natural strength, too often face prejudice and persecution deeply rooted in the hearts of others. She listens silently while the young man lays out his past before her. He admits, although he has endless mana, former comrades called him a fool and did not even want to believe in his abilities. He remains modest, almost brushing off what he himself has achieved. While she absorbs these words, his voice becomes even quieter. He admits, meeting her turned everything upside down. For the first time, he felt he could defeat the monster, but on his own terms. And in this restrained intonation sounds calm gratitude. He finally realizes that there really are people willing to stand by someone like him. Her face lights up with a radiant, white-toothed smile, and her eyes shine with genuine joy. It is this feeling that you are pushed away, and then you find strength beside him, that made her seek in him a partner for her own path. He catches her gaze, and a barely noticeable, uncertain smile flashes on his lips as soon as he accepts her offer. He nods to show he understands everything and promises to join only if she is truly happy to become a couple with a man whose reputation is too limited. When she receives the agreement, she is overwhelmed by a wave of pure delight. She shouts joyful cries, and these applause still echo in the space while the official proclamation of the creation of their party continues. And at that very moment she no longer lives in the present. Their gaze flashes with tomorrow's excitement, for she is eager to fight the dungeon's trials alongside her new companion by her side. When she laughs now with new confidence, as if nothing can stop them, a shadow of doubt flashes in his mind for a moment. He watches her closely and wonders if his sole talent for healing will be enough to truly endure all the trials ahead together with her. As soon as theory works in practice, a fierce clash begins. She rushes forward against the enemies and calls for help on the go, and he responds without hesitation. His magic heals her wounds with a single flash of light. The small skirmish ends in moments, leaving her with a sense of exhilaration and confidence that she has become even more skilled. He drinks her in with his gaze and a proud smile, but keeps all his conclusions to himself. She attributes their victory to his quick recovery, but he already sees the truth. Her natural development and combat skill are growing at an astonishing speed. He fixed his gaze on how she moved lightly and precisely, as if her true skill contradicted her official E-rank status. He felt that the conditions she found herself in were stifling her genuine, brilliant combat talent. While he watched her, a grim realization washed over him. He was incapable of breaking enemies on his own, so his own level remained stagnant no matter how many battles they fought together. This limit pressed on him every minute. Although he felt he had enough mana for infinity, the narrowness of his magical output tied him to F-rank, making him feel like an empty spot in the team. High's contribution seemed trivial. He accepted the harsh logic of this world. Experience is a reward for killing. And since he only supported the fight, the difference between his level and Cecilia's level would only grow and mercilessly erase him from the game. His gloomy thoughts were interrupted by her joyful exclamation. She suddenly stretched out her hand and pointed deep into the corridor, where huge, stern stone doors loomed. The impressive size of the entrance momentarily left him speechless. She's inner fears receded, giving way to the feeling that they were already a step away from their goal. You could hardly believe that they actually managed to reach here, to the deepest part of the dungeon, to the boss zone, despite the fact that there were only two of them and they belonged to a low-ranking party. The achievement seemed unreal. It seemed to prove that their unexpected tandem really worked when the odds tightened to hopelessness with every step. Because they so often encountered lizard enemies, he concluded, the room was ruled by a Lord Lizardman, and he again decided to ensure her safety with continuous treatment just as he had done before. Seeing her, he could not contain a wave of sincere admiration. She had grown incredible strength and power. She caught his gaze and gave him a radiant, soothing smile, as if reminding him, while she herself has to fight, it is his endless mana pool that holds her strength and allows her not to stop. Her confidence captivated him immediately, and doubts vanished for a moment. In front of the huge doors she froze and spoke frankly with a deep, sincere tone. To get here, she would not have succeeded without him by her side. She gave him full credit for success, acknowledging that he was the one who decided everything in every victory. As soon as he heard those words, warmth spread through his body, eclipsing any tactical considerations and official ranks. Above all else, it was her faith in him that proved to be the most important. He locked eyes with her, and his heart filled to the brim. Now he was ready to face whatever awaited beyond the last door. He freezes for a moment in shock when she proclaims her unwavering faith in him. Her words hang in the air, simple but extremely weighty, for it is with them that she confirms the bond they have woven through shared trials. He is overwhelmed by a wave due to the weight of her sincerity. He suddenly can't hold back. Tears well up on their own, and this throws her off balance. Calmly, without pathos, he agrees. Her assessment of the events is truly accurate. With every word, his voice trembles and sinks with emotion. Clenching his fist, he assesses his own limits as an F-rank adventurer whose only strength lies in healing. Doubt gnaws at him. Can someone of his status really change the course of a life-and-death battle already waiting beyond the door? Though doubts still linger somewhere inside, he finds the resolve to become her support and stronghold of strength. As soon as they step over the threshold into the very heart of the dungeon, the Lord emerges from the darkness, a giant, clad in armor, a lizard man. His appearance is oppressive, causing trembling and instilling fear. At the same time, she clenches everything within herself and prepares for the inevitable confrontation. The beast lets out a deafening roar, and a wave of power covers everyone with such force that it surpasses anything they have encountered before. He is increasingly gripped by horror. He realizes that his healing magic may not cope if the fight drags on, turning into an exhausting confrontation where they will be slowly ground down. Feeling the abyss in strength between them, he realizes with tension, his abilities are not enough against such an opponent. He immediately demands a retreat and directly says that his skills cannot match that power. He pleads with her, let her understand this is an opponent who cannot be defeated by his strength alone. She sharply turns to him and meets his gaze with a confident smile, as if urging, throw fear away and don't drift. She reminds him that it was his support that once gave her the courage to throw herself at monsters, so now the feeling of a real adventure awakens in her agony for the first time truly. He froze as an observer, struck by her unyielding determination as she prepares for the battle that will decide everything. She vows to win the dungeon together and asks for only one thing: that he places as much faith in her as she places in him. And promising that they will break the boss as a team, she relies on his readiness. She gave him her trust, but he was still held captive by cruel words from the past. Doran's voice echoed in his head, mocking the fact that he never managed to survive alone in the dungeon, as if deliberately questioning whether he even realized his own incapacity. In his memory, he kept hurling the same words, spluhovliaki likuvalnika znevizhivlivim smikham, as if the one who can only heal wounds disgraces the profession itself. For the arrogant warrior, the idea that such a limited person could become an adventurer was not just unrealistic, it looked laughably ridiculous. He sneered mockingly once again in his own painting, but her voice cut through the darkness of his memories, once again confirming that she believed in him. Her last jab about him being just an ostentatiously honorable jack-of-all-trades melted away as her warmth enveloped him. The young healer finally accepted the truth. Alone, he was truly powerless, even an ordinary slime he had not yet managed to defeat. But as soon as she appeared nearby, the burden of his past defeats ceased to matter. When he gathered himself and turned on his determination, a wave of excessive power suddenly burst out of him and flowed straight into Cecilia. She gasped convulsively, pressing her body against the surge of might. Defense and speed sharply jumped to a level she hadn't even dared to imagine. She was overwhelmed by the feeling that this incredible power was the true limit of his hidden potential. She suddenly surged forward, feeling rage for the first time, no longer caring about covering her rear, letting the protection work for him. Behind her, he unleashed a powerful healing spell. It not only restored the body but acted as a catalyst, enhancing each of her abilities. He poured the eternally flowing mana completely to the last drop into the spell. His eyes blazed, and a hard determination froze in his gaze. His plan was simple and infallible. He would turn her into the strongest warrior this world had ever seen. The warrior woman struck the lizard folk lord with all her might. The blow thundered like thunder. Her blade sharply cut through the air, relentlessly moving forward, dispersing resistance. The beast only staggered and petrified from the merciless force of their shared determination. She stands amid the settling dust, greedily raising and lowering her chest to catch her breath after the last, final blow. Beside her, her companion stands frozen, gazing at what has happened. Relief and admiration mingle in his eyes, and the silence of the battlefield finally replaces the roar of the clash. She finally realizes that the monster is truly defeated, and lets out a victorious cry of pure joy, rushing fiercely toward him and hugging him so fiercely and happily that she almost knocks him off his feet. The girl queen of the beasts does not let him go, holding on tightly while her tail swings in a fit of uncontrollable joy. He stammers confusedly, his cheeks reddening as he tries to process this sudden closeness that has overwhelmed him. When the first wave of adrenaline subsides, he looks at her with a warm, sincere smile and confidently states that their victory happened entirely and completely thanks to her incredible hard work and steadfast determination. She tilts her head and curiosity flashes in her gaze when she asks about the strange rainbow glow that burst from her body during the clash. In response, he looks away, hunched over guiltily. He explains that this phenomenon was caused by Exiled, a rare and incredibly powerful spell from the additional healing tier, which only a few master healers can cast, and only they have hope of casting it. When he finally succeeds, his face lights up with restrained pride. Seeing how difficult this moment turned out to be, he admits his confidence was based on unwavering faith in her. Then he sincerely apologizes for his former weight when she was the first to invite him to join her party. With a soft, sincere expression on his face, he takes her hand and asks if she will continue to support him on their shared path. His request sounds so genuine that she freezes for a moment, her eyes opening wide at the unexpected sincerity. She froze in place as if time had stopped. Her face flushed a deep crimson as the weight of his words overwhelmed her completely. Her breathing faltered, and her voice disobeyed. She barely found words in trembling fragments, completely confused. Noticing her state, he became worried. Had his demand that she continue to support him sounded too harsh? She quickly pulled herself together and assured him that there was nothing wrong with his words, they were just unexpected. The tense awkwardness broke immediately as he caught sight of something in the distance. He called her and stretched out his hand in that direction. There, among the shimmering light, appeared a large, luxuriously decorated chest. It was the dungeon prize, a silent sign of their victory, won in a hard-fought battle. The young traveler and his companion greedily lean over the heavy chest they just pulled from the rubble. Inside, they uncovered a real find. Cecilia immediately brightens with her gaze, notices a shiny rapier nestled among the coins, and calls him to look at the weapon they retrieved. She notes with relief, after her own sword was destroyed in their previous clash, the timing of this loot was just perfect. Then he reaches out and takes another reward, a smooth, light orb that pulses evenly with an otherworldly glow. As soon as he realizes he is holding a genuine magic stone, a wave of sincere reverence washes over him. Nearby, Cecilia almost jumps for joy, declaring that the rewards for clearing the dungeon are incredible. They allowed them to identify the stone as an extremely rare drop item. Darren leans in closer, and his face distorts with demanding, pressing determination as he blocks the two companions from both sides. He solemnly waves his hand, offering a place in his elite S-rank party as if it were a supreme favor that a normal person would never refuse. The pair freeze for a moment, speechless. Their eyes widen in shock as they realize the shameless audacity of the very offer. The armored warrior gives no answer. He sharply shouts an order the young man must immediately return to the guild. He bursts out laughing loudly, sure that he will now receive sincere gratitude, but the young man calmly declines the offer, both for himself and for his companion. The girl queen of beasts freezes in silence and silently watches as her partner explains. He has already found the perfect companion, the one who truly supports and responds with mutual understanding. The young man refuses without hesitation, firmly and definitively. This blow ignites a flash of pure rage in the warrior. It is unbearable to him that some ordinary craftsman dares to reject his kindness. A sharp, tense argument is suddenly interrupted by a panicked emergency broadcast. A message has appeared that an S-rank monster has broken into the kingdom of Baal, and all adventurers are urgently summoned to arms. The young man froze for a moment while the roaring siren confirmed the unthinkable. The S-rank monster broke through the kingdom's defenses. Just as Darren tried to intervene, the young man sharply interrupted him, ordered him to stay behind, and stated that their conversation would wait for another time. Next to him trembled the girl Ken with fear and haste. When she realized that without immediate deployment the country would be completely destroyed, her voice broke from tension. He wasted no time. He shouted for her to move while they prepared to go forward straight to the very heart of the crisis. When they rushed out onto the streets like a whirlwind, complete bacchanalia reigned around. Frightened townspeople scattered in all directions, saving themselves as best they could, while other tall adventurers pushed people aside with indifferent selfishness just to break free themselves. He stopped by a fallen woman and pushed her to a safe place while she managed to squeeze out words of thanks through broken breath. She watched with disgust the backs of those heroes who were retreating and shouted after them. They were supposed to be daredevils, not those who run away, no support, no readiness to stand their ground. He measured everything with a gloomy look, understanding that these people probably sincerely believed Darren and other leaders would solve everything for them, a sign of rot rooted in the very hierarchy of the guild. Suddenly it dawned on him with cold clarity. The system was created to keep the privileged safe, to bribe officials and push through shadowy deals to suppress the ranks of outsiders. This was the norm and habit, and only when he was expelled did he feel the true distortion of the guild's internal games politics that worked only for the top. With bitterness in his heart, he stated, the guild members had relaxed and calmed down with their former achievements, shifting the heaviest work onto someone else's shoulders. It looked like shameful cowardice. They left their duty to the people just when their help was needed most. While annoyance boiled inside her, she forced him to hurry, pressed him. Even when they remain alone, they must give all the support they can. They raced through crooked city alleys, not taking their eyes off the smoke rising higher and higher in the distance. Finally, they reached the central square of the kingdom of Baal. They were met by a scene of complete devastation, buildings in ruins and the ground scorched by battle. He froze in confusion, drinking in the scale of destruction, and suddenly realized how real the threat they were about to face truly was. He freezes, stunned, staring at the carnage. His voice trembles as he asks if the destruction could really have reached such a scale. Nearby, Cecilia squeezes a sign of life from a pile of debris among the ruins. She finds a survivor and shudders from surprise. He is still breathing. She immediately rushes to help, stretches out her hands, offers to treat the man's wounds, but he can only squeeze out a desperate warning through the suffocation: let them run before it becomes too late. Suddenly, a heavy, oppressive darkness looms over them. Both freeze in place. Their eyes sharply widen with pure fear as they look up at what is engulfing the sky in darkness. Above the city looms a silver-winged ancient dragon, an S-rank monster of legendary scale. its scales shimmer with cold, deadly light. The spectators freeze at the colossal size of the beast and cannot tear their eyes away, wondering, could this really be the mythical creature that descended upon the kingdom? Before the dragon can strike again, a figure tears down from above with a roar blade drawn forward to face the monster, which usually hides in the deepest dungeons and almost never approaches human settlements. It is Darren, the self-absorbed traveler we saw earlier, who screams a challenge to the beast, while Duran and Cecilia realize an S-rank party has burst in to join the fight. He does not have to act alone while he holds his ground nearby. Shirin and Ro prepare their own specialized techniques to strengthen the desperate assault on the ancient predator. He and his company cover the opponent with a barrage of strikes. The dragon howls in pain as clouds of smoke fill the square and destructive rubble falls. He confidently accepts victory as a fact. The warrior prepares what he believes will be the final blow, disdainfully mocking the legendary monster and its supposed power. But his overconfidence is immediately cut short by a swift, brutal response. The opponent knocks him down with a sharp countermove, and he crashes onto the cobblestones with a dull thud, his comrade freezing in horror. Just as he fails to regain consciousness, the dragon releases a devastating stream of energy, and the space is instantly engulfed by a dazzling fiery vortex. When their leader falls, the young healer cuts through the chaos with a swift dash and a desperate attempt to reach him and bandage those severe wounds. For now, the dragon shifts its predatory gaze to the last fighter, who lets out a frenzied scream from his chest, the only thing he manages before the giant creature prepares to strike. Just as the blow is about to hit, a new figure rushes into the battle. She sharply jumps forward and firmly presses a heavy shield to herself to take the force upon it and protect the warrior who has already fallen. An ally arrives. A young girl with a determined face introduces herself. She is Lumina, an adventurer who was demoted, and she has come to offer help. First, she checks if the others are safe, then speaks. An unexpected firmness sounds in her voice despite the hopeless mood of the situation. Despite her desperate charge, the dragon's overwhelming power is already starting to knock the ground from under their feet. She shouts through clenched teeth, holding back the beast with all her might. She holds her position, her voice trembles but does not give in. Cutting off thoughts of retreat, she speaks firmly and confidently until the shock reaches her. The elite S-rank party is almost destroyed. The young shielder declares that her rank does not define her duty and fleeing is not an option. Her boots dig into the ground, nailing her determination in place. She insists, when an emergency mission is announced, the power of any traveler must be devoted to the cause regardless of the letters written in their name and whatever danger awaits them. She sharply raises her gaze, a firm fire flashes in her eyes. She reveals the core of her conviction. She chose the path of the shielder precisely to become a person capable of protecting others, and she does not intend to abandon this goal. Next to Cecilia, she suddenly realizes, if she breaks away now, she will never be able to look her companion in the eyes again, even if this very pause marks the end of her journey. A blinding wave of heat strikes. The dragon's rage flares before her eyes, and she, lunging her body backward, presses the shield to take the flames upon herself. She is gripped by an increasingly unbearable feeling of pressure until the fool bursts forward. His voice cuts through the roar of flames as he releases a powerful healing spell to support her forces that are already cracking and failing. He watches as Cecilia dives into the smoke and disappears within it, while the bewildered looter remains behind. He continues to direct his energy, weaving an undeniable shield and endless restoration around Cecilia so that the dragon's flames cannot touch her while she breaks into the thickest part of the fight. He grins triumphantly and watches closely as his magic holds without fail. He exclaims with relief that the plan really worked, while the others stand their ground and do not retreat before the fading heat of the dragon's breath. Beside him, a huge silver-winged ancient dragon stumbles. Its breath breaks and dark liquid flows from its jaws, while the onset of the clash brings exhaustion upon these ancient creatures. Before their eyes, a battle continues in which the beast fights back and suffocates from its own torment. The young mage shows. They manage to get exactly where needed. The dragon is pinned so tightly that it has to make a forced pause, and the royal beast girl, having survived, exhales a long breath of pure gratitude. In this brief lull, Lumina rushes to her companion. Her voice trembles with shock as she asks why her friend would throw himself into the very flames and consciously step into such deadly danger. She sharply presses the girl to herself in a suffocating embrace, and tears of joy stream down her face as she says, A true friend never abandons someone in trouble, and she is literally overwhelmed by the simple fact that they are both still alive. Not far from them, Shirin tries to calm the sobbing ally, gently quieting him with a whisper and uttering quiet words of support to gather his nerves shaken by fear after the terrible encounter. Then the warrior raises her gaze upward. Her face reveals nothing, but in every expression one feels the full weight of the ongoing struggle and the wounds she has already endured. Maintaining collected calm, the boy approaches her, extends his hand, and utters a healing spell. A dim, soft glow of magic begins to stitch her wounds as she lifts her eyes to him and silently recognizes the aid. He finishes the initial treatment. His palms still tremble from residual magic, and he tells Shirin that now she can go. Shirin's face darkens, guilt and confusion mix as she asks why he helps at all if her group treated him so harshly. He brushes off her doubts, ordering her to leave and entrust the remaining fight to his comrades. But the danger is not over yet. He gestures for her to take the wounded Darren and retreat to a safe place. Shirin remains standing, not lowering her gaze from him, and her breath falters as she suddenly feels how deeply his resolve runs. He admits he has not even a hint of warm feelings toward Darren. It is enough to recall the long months of humiliation and immediately surfaces how he suffered under oppression in the guild itself. No matter what personal grievances gnaw at him, he still does not retreat. But doubt overwhelms Shirin. How could any adventurer with an F rank manage where Darren, an experienced fighter, suffered such a devastating failure? From her hesitation, he sharply urges there is no time to delay while the dragon regains strength. Then he explains, as a healer, his duty weighs more than any personal offense. He simply has no right to abandon someone's life, even if he hates that person. He turns his gaze away from the departing pair and briefly tries to atone for the delay to Cecilia. She responds with a smile. Her tail twitches spasmodically in anticipation as she declares she is ready. While Chevron lifts the exhausted Darren, Cecilia glances back as if catching how the air changes direction. Inside Cecilia, confidence flares. She is convinced that victory becomes possible as long as she stands beside him. They together face the looming threat, holding on to a resolve that does not waver. He lets out a battle cry and loudly calls them to attack, proclaiming that their plan is to forever overthrow the silver-winged ancient dragon. With a sharp metallic clang, the blade is brought to readiness. It already stands for the final clash. Darren struggles to open his eyelids and immediately sees Shirin sitting nearby, attentively watching him with a look of relief on her face. As his vision clears, Darren hastily asks in a strained, hoarse voice from exhaustion where Ronan is now. He shifts his gaze to the horizon, and the ancient dragon in huge, silvery scales rises before him, like a mountain of death about to collapse. The wounded warrior's gaze sharply widens. A terrifying thought flashes in his mind. If his comrades are really nearby, he urgently demands who is now holding the defense against the beast. Shirin holds his gaze firmly, and a growing suspicion sounds in her voice. Fowl has a special ability. She explains that he continuously strengthens that beast woman again and again, without pause, and seems to feed on mana from a bottomless well that prevents significant damage. Darren bursts out in denial. He shouts that such incredible powers are rare gifts from birth, which even seasoned veterans like them do not possess. He cannot accept the idea that an ordinary novice could be so gifted. He tries to jerk his legs away in fierce irritation, but she firmly presses him in place and firmly warns, his body will not withstand the strain. As soon as he relaxes and leans back, her words truly weigh down on him, and he begins to struggle with the inevitable truth. The undeniable miracle of Fowl's healing depends on her support. On the scorched earth, Lumina firmly braces behind her gigantic shield. Gritting her teeth, she takes the icy blow of the dragon's claw, which nearly breaks her bones, while Cecilia prepares her next move. The beast woman suddenly lunges forward. Her blade cuts into the dragon's skin and sparks fly in all directions, but the steel cannot catch on its scales. Clenching her teeth, she realizes with growing fear, not an inch of this beast yields. Everything is too resilient for her current strength. She sharply shouts to her companion, warning her weapon is powerless against such armor. And he calmly watches everything, recognizing the ancient dragon scales turned out to be as impregnable as the legend says. He decides to continue increasing her physical capabilities, persistently pushing the strength forward until the dragon's defense eventually breaks under this pressure. Suddenly, the giant creature flaps its wings, and a fierce gust of wind bursts from them. It rushes across the battlefield, tearing everything in its path and confusing the warrior. She clings to the ground, trying to hold on while the gusts of wind threaten to tear her away and carry her off. Her eyes widen sharply as she feels an unexpected force of pressure in the air. Whirling currents lift her off the ground and toss her like a leaf in a storm as she screams in short, sharp spasms. She crashes to the ground with a thud and is immediately pinned down by the collapsing force of the wind. Her back is pressed so hard that she cannot move while the dragon prepares the next devastating strike. She braced herself before the blow when the dragon's power exploded around her, and to her surprise, there was no trace of pain. Lowering her gaze to her own hands, she saw she was unharmed. Nearby, her companion only sighed with relief. Finally, he had aligned reality with what he had relied on. She became living proof of his success, and he, smiling with confidence that appeared for the first time, realized his additional healing had pushed her defense far beyond the natural limit. Now she could face even the most destructive blows of the ancient dragon without flinching. He understood they were simply holding on to survive. The friends remained pinned on the defense, and he desperately searched his thoughts for any way to break this deadlock until their luck ran out. He froze in place and watched as the giant monster suddenly stopped its attack. Its reptilian eyes scanned the area with cold, calculated attentiveness that sent a chill down his spine. He caught the moment when she shouted a challenge at the retreating beast, demanding that it return and face her face to face, but the creatures seemed to have lost interest in direct confrontation by that time. She did not take her eyes off the beast, unaware that he was already beginning to understand the dragon's true plan. Its retreat was not out of fear, it was trying to find the source of the strange phenomenon that kept her safe so far. His heart pounded against his ribs as he locked eyes with the dragon. Suddenly it dawned on him that the beast had recognized the real danger, the one that provided the magical protection. Barely managing to break free from the spot, he hastily jumped aside as the ground beneath him was instantly wiped from sight by a sudden, wildly brutal lunge of the dragon, and it had to freeze in motionless horror and watch. He is thrown backward from shock as the air around him explodes with sudden, brutal force. The young healer shudders with pure terror. He suddenly realizes that the ancient silverwing dragon was not fighting blindly. The beast was tracking the source of the magic that empowered Cecilia. As the giant creature lunges forward and closes the distance, he barely manages to fire his gas attack before the strike, and Cecilia's desperate scream echoes across the battlefield. He is thrown into the air by the force of the blow itself. He uncontrollably flips over. With a dull thud, he crashes into the ground, and the pain knocks the breath out of him. Barely, he tries to call healing upon himself, quietly whispering a spell through clenched teeth, but his body does not obey, heavy and lifeless from exhaustion. Seeing him broken and lying on the ground, Cecilia's eyes widen sharply, horror mixed with growing rage. She screams his name again, her voice breaking with emotion, and her gaze pierces the dragon. She cannot believe that this creature targeted someone so defenseless. She is ready to launch an attack again, but he interrupts with a desperate shout, his voice strained to the limit. He explains, the recent attack interrupted his spell, the protective buffs he gave are not working now, so she must wait before engaging in battle. Despite the warning, the shockwave from the dragon's next move knocks her off her feet. She slides as if on ice, her soles scraping against the stone floor. He freezes, powerless, bloodied and battered, while events rapidly spiral out of control. His palm scrapes the cold ground, fingers twitching as he searches for the strength to get up. Suddenly Lumina bursts into the thick of the fight. Her huge shield absorbs the following blow, and a dull, sharp metallic clang rings out. She holds her ground and withstands the pressure flooding everything around, momentarily providing fallen comrades a safe barrier. She rushes swiftly to Cecilia, her voice trembling with anxiety as her gaze scans the body, checking for injuries. Nearby, Fu grimaces, clutching his side and groaning from the blow left by the dragon's previous attack. Relieved to exhale because her friend remained unharmed. The young shield-bearer blooms into a smile, but Cecilia awkwardly freezes. She was sure that she would flee from the terrifying beast. As they stand side by side, the fool watches Cecilia intently and feels in his chest. Her resolve will not waver even a step. And then he realizes if he flees now while she fights so selflessly, he will become nothing but a coward. With renewed confidence, she declares, since they once saved her, now she intends to save both Cecilia and Fu at once. Her eyes blaze with fierce determination to protect her comrades, the very same courage she has often seen in them. Clutching the equipment, she pulls out a glowing magical stone and, explaining, says she noticed its fall back when the fool was earlier slammed into the ground. She urges him to focus on the fight right now and, without hesitation, hands the sphere to the bewildered young man. He stares motionless at the bullet. A sudden realization ripens within him as he feels its hidden power and brings his catalyst to it. He already sees how he can release a destructive fiery projectile, and a question begins to spin in his mind. What will happen if he lets his own infinite mana pass through such a powerful focus? Turning to his allies, he urgently demands, let them give him as much time as possible. Cecilia and Lumina turn around, catching how his voice changed and what plan he is making. With a confident, self-satisfied smile, he proclaims that he has finally found a way to ensure their victory. In his palm glows a spheria beacon of hope against the all-consuming shadow of the dragon. When two warriors rush forward to draw the giant creature's attention, he begins to gather strength, slowly exhaling to calm the trembling inside. He understands despite his gear showing nowhere, even his most powerful healing spells hit a limit when it comes to physical enhancement. So this next strike becomes decisive. He watched intently as the young shield maiden stepped forward. Her voice thundered a challenge to the huge beast. She pressed the heavy shield into the ground with all her might and, boldly addressing the dragon, as if deliberately provoking it, forced the creature to direct its fury straight at her. She managed to lure the beast's attention. His entire gaze was completely drawn to the provocation with the shield. Seizing the moment, she sharply called her comrade of the beast kin, and they both began to hold the front while their plan moved to the next stage. Watching their courage closely, he felt determination flare in his chest. He understood his mission was to be support and healing. But when he saw how they risked their lives holding the front line, one thought grew in him: he had to go beyond his own limits. He caught the thought that healing skills alone were not enough. He would have to become the offensive force they lacked to put an end to this clash. With terrible tension, he bursts from his place and pours every drop of his boundless mania into that tiny magical stone. His voice cuts through the space. He wants to create the most powerful fireball ever seen, fueled by a power that seems endless. The sky seemed to flare up. A huge sphere of flame overshadowed the sun. Below, the veteran healer and the equipped warrior stood frozen with open mouths, unable to look away, and could not believe what they saw. What kind of magic was unfolding before them? They had never seen a fireball of such terrible power, and it was still hard for them to force themselves to admit that it happened because of him. Seeing the danger, the two girls ran away from the impact site as fast as they could. In shock, they screamed as a terrifying force loomed over them, approaching like an air wave from above. Their distracting trick had worked, and now it was time to flee from the inevitable explosion drawing near. He let out a final hoarse scream and released the full burden of the curse. The dragon, which until then had embodied invincible power, sharply raised its head, its eyes wide open with fear as a fiery vortex crashed down on it, and the roar of the flames drowned out all other sounds. A deafening explosion shook the entire battlefield, and in an instant a blinding flash of heat and light consumed everything around. The shockwave from the giant explosion spreads through the air, tossing debris and figures as mercilessly as leaves in a storm. In this whirlwind, the warriors try to stay on their feet while the dust slowly settles over the battlefield. He groans and clutches his head, slowly rising from the charred ground. Nearby, at the very center of the explosion, thick smoke billows. It marks the spot where the devastating spell struck. Noticing that he has moved, his companions immediately rush to him and stand beside him. Their voices sound fragmented, a mix of relief and anxiety that has not yet faded as they check him for wounds. Together, they all turn their gaze to the huge, inky carcass of the dragon, helplessly sprawled among the debris and motionless. The following silence presses down. They feel that they have just done something incredible and silently ask themselves if the beast has truly fallen silent forever. The tension breaks instantly. The beast girl lets out a joyful scream and abruptly hugs her friends, squeezing them in sudden, emotion-filled embraces. She shouts at the top of her lungs, celebrating the impossible victory over the ancient terror. She continues to shine with pride. Her face burns with excitement after managing to subdue the S-rank monster. Nearby, a young mage freezes in shocked silence, his thoughts racing as he comprehends the scale of their deed, while the shield-bearer is overwhelmed by a whirlwind of emotions. Far away, their small figures look like pure happiness, but the blonde warrior grabs air with every breath from the tight hugs as approving murmurs echo around. But not everyone shares the joy. Standing nearby is an armored knight, battered, covered in blood and bruises. His face twists into a grimace as he watches the young man. He grits his teeth, not taking his eyes off the one who dealt the final blow. A dark shadow passes over his features despite the armor, solid as if forged from rage. Dust slowly settles over the battlefield as the young man looks back at the fallen titan. The silence that covers the place after the roar of the clash feels heavy, and at the same time, relief is already growing within it. Nearby, townsfolk freeze and look as if they cannot believe their eyes. Their voices rise in a wave of excited whispers as they finally realize the incredible has happened. They call out to each other, unable to calm down, marveling at how a simple trio managed to defeat such a giant with one devastating display of fire. Shock instantly breaks into sincere, flawless joy. The air bursts with victorious shouts and convulsive words of gratitude. They rush forward, their faces lighting up with realization they have been saved from inevitable death. The rescuers are greeted with such fervor that this cry echoes among the ruins for a long time. Against the backdrop of the crowd's roaring cheers, members of the Ballroom Guild approach them with faces that just yesterday showed confusion, but now reveal newfound respect. They wonder how an adventurer of such a low rank managed to conceal a power rising like something colossal. Their skepticism eventually gives way. When they recognize the one once simply called a fool, only genuine admiration remains in their eyes. The young hero freezes. The veteran's hand, warm and confident, rests on his shoulder as he takes a step forward to thank him. The palpable weight of this gesture and the sincerity in the older soldier's gaze stir a wave of emotions, and for a moment the youth is left speechless, unable to respond to such frank gratitude for saving their lives. While he swallows compliments and digests praise, the Queen of Beasts suddenly becomes the center of attention. A whole pack of children, with their eyes wide open, surrounds her in a tight circle. Their voices tremble with excitement as they declare her their new hero and, inspired by her courage, dream of one day following her path to become great travelers. She blushes deeply. Instead of her usual battle focus, her face is lit up by a shy, bright smile. She tries to deflect this adoration from herself. Laughing softly, she tells them she is simply glad everyone is safe. Her heart is warmed by the innocent joy of the people she has so persistently protected. When the sun leans toward sunset, the team finally gathers in one placid tension that held all day fades away. They are surrounded by a friendly pack and those they saved. They catch their breath for a moment, and the bond forged in the fires of battle grows even stronger. While he's resting with his comrades, a royal messenger approaches them. The guard scrutinizes the group and directly asks if they are the ones who defeated the ancient silver-winged dragon, then delivers unexpected news. The king himself wants to hear their report immediately at Ball Castle. Although the young man did not expect such royal interest, he immediately acknowledges. As frontline fighters, they are obliged to report what happened. Returning to the young shield maiden who stood nearby in battle, he insists she must go with them to the capital. The proposal throws her off balance. Her eyes widen sharply, and she freezes in complete disbelief as he explains that since they fought as one, she deserves to stand among the royal spectators. The girl from the Beast Kingdom immediately steps back, following her, grabs the knight by the hand, and does not accept any no. Despite his objections that she is not an official member of their company, the new companions do not even want to hear about leaving her behind after the trial they endured together. Her stubbornness cracks under the pressure of their unbreakable determination and genuine warmth. She falters, and her face flushes with a blush within her mingle embarrassment and a truly touched feeling from being accepted so sincerely and completely. Eventually, she seems to quietly thank them for the invitation just as they set off together on the road. The tension after the battle eases, and instead a quiet sense of togetherness appears among the three as they head to the place of power. The journey leads them to the majestic spires of Ball Castle. Soon they rise above the horizon and reveal themselves as a gigantic stone fortress, the heart of the entire kingdom. Flags on its heights tear in the wind, as if warning of the weight of the meeting that awaits them behind the high walls. He silently watches as the endless corridors of the majestic complex take his companions' breath away. Their glances flit back and forth, captivated by the luxurious architecture. The girl with the King of Beasts aloud wonders if he is used to such grandeur, noting his outward restraint while they stand with wide-open eyes, with admiration that cannot subside. He admits he is by no means comfortable and honestly says that before he had only seen the king from afar during public parades. When everything said finally reaches him, his movements become stiff, dry, and robotic. His usual composure is crushed by a wave of nervous, sharp, painful, even trembling as they approach the throne room. Before King Baal, he nervously freezes, for it is precisely the trust he has earned among his people that he is truly respected for. The monarch greets their company, addressing separately the one called Fool, and thanks them for visiting his castle. Behind the king, Cecilia and Lumino whisper to each other, and their voices reveal surprise. The king looks like such a pleasant and genuine gentleman. Suddenly, Darren steps forward and shocks the whole company with a statement that Fall brilliantly coped as a member of his guild. Cecilia immediately tenses defensively. She shouts in confusion about Darren's appearance and reminds everyone that Fall has already been expelled. But Darren does not lose his tone, dismisses her words as selfish nonsense and fabricated slanderous accusations. He clings even tighter to the deception, hinting as if Cecilia herself confused her own circumstances with someone else's nonsensing that she was the one who pushed away first. The audacity of the fabrication turns everything inside out. She freezes without words, and a wave of heat flashes across her face, a mixture of shock and anger, as she struggles to hold this sharp turn in her mind. The king, focused and sternly watching that scene, shifts his gaze to the girl of Beast Queen. He speaks directly, asks if Darren's words are true, and seeks confirmation of her status. With a gaze shaded by the shadow of her eyelashes, she lowers her eyes and tightly grips the fabric on her. Sulfension is even visible in the protruding knuckles of her fingers. Her soul feels heavy, and her voice sounds quiet. She confirms, it is truly the truth, but the meaning of her words is already being twisted by Darren's narrative. Vol retreats with his gaze in complete shock while Darren continues to spin a web of lies and tells the king. Supposedly, Vol most likely fell into despair and exaggerated everything, succumbing to the wave of the moment. With each of his words, Vol feels the fear growing. Darren is trying to impose the image of the guild members on them, only to take the reward for defeating the dragon for himself. Deception reaches a truly disgusting peak when Darren insists that his own comrades Ro and AI died in battle, and Fulu had to take revenge for them because he is a loyal guild member. Fulu is overwhelmed by a wave of horror. His eyes widen sharply as the disdain for the fallen is spoken right to his face. He trembles at the thought that Darren might use the deaths of his comrades to steal glory for himself, and he cannot fathom how low the man is capable of sinking. But before he can gather his voice to protest, the king turns to him and asks for his opinion on the matter. The monarch's gaze washes over him like a heavy wave, and the boy freezes for a moment, as if petrified with exhaustion. He froze in place, and the full weight of what was happening pressed him to the ground, while Darren's mocking laughter echoed through the hall. The guild leader teased him and threw threats. Lying to the king without any evidence is a fatal mistake. Desperately, he groped for thoughts to find any way to confirm what was said, but the realization hit him like a tangible physical blow. He had nothing to confirm the harsh dismissal he had suffered that day. When silence hangs in the air, the guild leader drops to one knee, showing subdued submission before the throne. He declares aloud to the king that he would never have thought to expel such a talented fighter and calls the young man the pride of his guild. Grinning like a snake, he begs the monarch that the credit for the victory over the dragon be given to him and his organization, and right in the king's presence, he weaves a web of deceit. The heavy atmosphere is shattered by the sudden appearance of a familiar figure. Shirin bursts into the hall, her steps firm and her face like a frozen ice block without any readable emotion. Her presence sends a wave of shock through the gathering. Cecilia and Lumina exchange embarrassed glances. They see that the S-rank adventurer is finally here, but the moment of her arrival seems too fragile. He beams at her appearance as if she herself became the final link in his plan lie. Darren sharply calls her, urging her, let her explain everything to the king and confirm the fabricated story that the young man was never expelled, and he fought bravely, remaining a loyal fighter in their ranks during the battle. She stands motionless beside Hema, silent guard in the spacious hall. Darren continues to act out the scene, waving his arms widely as if they are one whole, but he does not notice how the tension in the air changes while she remains silent. Her gaze is fixed straight ahead. He looks intently at her, and anxiety slowly gnaws from within. While the others whispered, guessing whether she came to reinforce Darren's lies or was just another figure in the guild party, he notices something else. Her gaze and behavior are completely different. In her manner, there is a strange, focused energy that has nothing to do with the confidence Darren tries to show. Without a single word from her to Hirsch, the leader, considered the main one, steps forward to the throne, reaches for the equipment, takes out a folded parchment, and calmly offers it to the king, asking him to take and carefully examine the document. The monarch extends his hand and takes the paper. As he unfolds the official notice of the guild's dismissal, his eyes widen sharply and the signature and seal strike at first glance. Nearby, Darren's face instantly loses color. His ostentatious confidence cracks and turns into pure, merciless fear, because the very lies he relied on are revealed before him in the hands of the person from whom he expected protection of his own reputation. He jerked back from the incredible, his face twisted with rage as he demanded to know where she got that document. Shirin shot him a cold, mercilessly disappointed look that mirrored his own cruelty while also undermining whether he even remembered his own words. She did not slow down and continued the verbal attack, pointing her finger as if to say he himself had signed the expulsion and then discarded it like junk. The knight tried to hold on, but his composure crumbled. Sweat ran down his forehead when he suddenly realized he had erased the proof of his own arrogance, the privilege he had once loudly boasted about. The king's heavy gaze fell upon him like a tangible blow, and the monarch demanded an immediate explanation for the discrepancy. Crouching in words from fear and pressure, the knight stammered and tried to brush off the incriminating evidence, acclaiming it was just a misunderstanding, but his voice betrayed a tremor before the exposure. Instead of looking for answers where they were imposed, the king turned his gaze to the young man standing silently nearby and directly asked the lad, "Is the knight really his companion?" Feeling his own death approaching, the knight rushed forward and firmly grabbed the boy by the shoulder. His voice broke into a frightened whisper full of treacherous conditions. He begged for obedience and even agreed to give the youth all the glory for their recent deeds just for him to lie and call them allies. He kept roaring, and despair escalated to a frenzied maximum as he tried to build logic and break free from the trap. Supposedly, any cooperation turns them into a team, so that means the guilds will credit the merits. Outside of him, others stood silently watching, their faces hardening with disgust at his blatant cowardice. The young man stared directly without averting his eyes at the interlocutor. His voice remained steady and asserted without hesitation when he shattered the nighttime lies with a single blow. One loud, unwavering denial was enough, and he crossed out the false story about their partnership closeness. A dim but clear gaze passes over the king's face as he just accepted the youth's truth. The monarch's brief praise sounds like confirmation. The truth is finally established, and the deceived knight has nowhere else to turn. He lowered his gaze to the one who was trembling and spoke coldly and evenly. He stated, rumors about rot in the guild had already reached him, and the whole scene before the assembly was a planned test to confirm the truth. Darren could only choke on his words in response. His face turned pale as he suddenly realized that his deception had completely failed. Next to her, a dark-haired woman lowered her gaze, and the heaviness of the moment froze on her face. She admitted, the guild's actions, fueled only by vulgarity and greed, could no longer be denied even now, at this late stage, and she directly named the scale of their collective failure. While the young travelers silently watched, the monarch's voice softened slightly as he spoke about his subjects, openly declaring that he sincerely cherished the people of the kingdom, and it was this very feeling that unfailingly fueled his determination to achieve justice. His voice broke into a thunderous roar aimed straight at the disgraced knight. He declared that he would never forgive the wrong done to the travelers of the country, and the fire in his gaze flared with righteous anger so fiercely that Darren froze in fear. Without further words, he waved to the guards and they rushed to seize the traitor. When Darren was roughly dragged away to the side of the dungeons, the royal gaze once again slid to the woman who had stood beside the guild for so many years. He acknowledged her decision to finally tell the truth as a timely move, but sternly reminded her that she was still involved in the unjust expulsion of the young man standing right before them. She calmly and dignifiedly accepted the reproach, thanked him for his words, and asked permission to retrieve her lease agreement. Seeing her turn to leave, the young man hurried to catch up with her, and his voice sounded genuinely confused. He stopped her and asked the only question burning in his mind. Why did she still agree to help them after what had already happened? She stopped and looked back at him. Her gaze was hard to read. She calmly replied that it was nothing, thereby making him wonder if she expected him to ask the same question others had asked. Her eyes reflected a whole wave of feelings, ones she was not yet ready to reveal. She moves away and disappears into the distance, forcing the group to digest the very fact of her departure. The fool and his comrades freeze in silence, watching her silhouette until it becomes very small and vanishes from sight. The tension finally subsides, and a wave of relief washes over the entire company. Cecilia lets out a long, exhausted sigh, grateful and trembling, while Lumina only detachedly states, "The nearest trouble seems to have come to an end." When the guildmaster is nowhere to be seen, the Kingdom of the Ball Guild is officially declared disbanded. Full freezes in thought, calm on the face, but deeply contemplates how this sudden change overturned the balance of power in the kingdom. The king's loud laughter suddenly breaks the silence, utters words of sincere gratitude. After this, he declares that he will definitely reward the group for their bravery that saved the kingdom, and Cecilia and Lumina, shocked and happy from these words, simply cannot get enough. The royal treasury is opened, and it throws legendary artifacts at the heroes. Cecilia takes the two Catons, Lightning Light and Gale, and Lumina is awarded the impenetrable barrier Great Shield. And for the complete set, the king presents the Archmace and the Orb of Blessing, items of incredible magical power. He pauses for a moment. He feels that everything is done only out of duty, but the king pays no attention to this. The monarch confirms their status as the only true saviors of the kingdom and waves away any thoughts of modesty. The girls eagerly examine the new equipment. Cecilia catches sight of the prospect of dual-wielding weapons and does not hide her amazement, while Luminia clutches the fresh shield with new piety, trembling at the thought of the slightest scratch. Full utters a sincere word of thanks, taking upon his shoulders the entire burden of royal generosity. The king's merriment fades and a restrained seriousness awakens within him. He shifts his gaze to a far more important matter: the recent attack of the ancient silver-winged dragon, which may mean the opportunity they gained will not last long. He continues the explanation and emphasizes a strange inconsistency. An S-rank monster like the silver-winged ancient dragon usually acts cautiously and wisely, almost never leaving its underground lair to attack human settlements without a good reason, so this unprecedented aggression looks suspicious to Tears. He watches how the whole company responds while the young beastwoman Cecilia puts forward simple logic. If the dragon had a cozy home, it wouldn't have to go outside and cause trouble elsewhere. Maya, her companion, nods in agreement and wonders if maybe the dragon is no longer able to live in its dwelling. A sudden thought strikes the young traveler and they silently watch as she aloud suggests, perhaps the dragon was driven out of its own lands not by someone's attacks, but by something much stronger. The monarch grimly nods in response and without hesitation confirms her guess, acknowledging the risk that a catastrophic shift of power is brewing in the labyrinth. Then he utters aloud the terrible news, the birth of a dungeon that will turn into a catastrophe, the very phenomenon that in the oldest legends was called one of the 4 divine calamities. The message pierces the team with trembling, for the sense of a legendary threat that could move an S-class dragon finally reaches everyone. He explains these calamities are 4 magical beasts that hold within themselves a power so colossal that it can shift the very balance of the world. Such an event is called a dungeon disaster. The list includes Seryu, the fierce water dragon god, Bayako, the illusion tiger god, Jinbu, the 2-headed god of wisdom with a turtle shell, and also Suzaku, the mysterious fire bird god who burns even life itself. This creature tramples and kills all other monsters in the dungeon where it was born, destroying its own ecosystem and forcing the survivors to flee. He returns to the trio and concludes, the silver-winged ancient dragon likely left his home after losing a power struggle with one of these gods. Having witnessed their power firsthand, the king officially assigns Fulu, Cecilia, and Mia to investigate the growing underground disaster and contain it. Rising before the gathered crowd, King Baal solemnly entrusts them with a monumental task, to scout and tame the 4 divine scourges, prison catastrophes looming over the country. He acknowledges their value as the kingdom's salvation and declares that this mission is the highest gift he can give them. The young man clearly flinches at the size of the request. At the word about such legendary threats, he opens his eyes wide, almost in shock. To conquer the 4 divine catastrophes seems like an impossible dream, but the king assures, the whole country will fully support them and they will receive any reward they desire if they survive and complete the mission. He continues, and in his face softness blends with majestic seriousness and hope as he shifts his gaze to the group. He emphasizes, precisely because they stand on their feet and are capable of traveling, he wants to entrust them with this vital task, and he is convinced only they can truly manage and bring the matter to success. The young man inside is falling apart with panic and frantically considers whether his boundless mana will be enough against the SS-class monsters he has only read about in books. While he hesitates, Cecilia quietly interrupts the conversation. She thanks the king for his trust and then asks an unexpected question: will they still be able to go on ordinary adventures while carrying out this mission? Her companions suddenly react to the sharp question right in front of the royal court members, their faces mix shame and complete confusion. She explains, their squad has just formed, there have been almost no adventures in it yet. There are still so many places in the world she wants to see and experience together with them. She lights up with a radiant smile and declares, she wants to protect everything around her and cherish the bonds they are already building. She truly intends to give her all to help find and destroy the monsters, but she does not plan to stray from her path. They have just set off together, a new part of this journey has just begun. Hearing her words, the young man finds his own determination and joins her request. He admits, he feels the same, wants to see the world with his own eyes. He adds that he will not hesitate to carry out the order, but as a doctor, he has no right to turn away from people who suffer, and at the same time allow life to narrow down to just one mission. He steps forward and without hesitation directly addresses the king, whether he will allow him to carry out the duty entrusted to him by royal order, but at the same time continue his own adventures. The king freezes for a moment, thrown off balance by the sudden pace and the very essence of their counterproposal. His eyes widen sharply in shock, full of amazement, stirred by their audacity. He silently listens as the king grants them the freedom to travel the world as they please. The monarch clarifies that while the existence of the 4 divine catastrophes is still being verified, a research team will soon be assembled, and if during their travels one of these calamities does manifest, the king expects them to answer for this will with their own strength. The young traveler and his companions agree without hesitation. Their faces blaze with determination, and they themselves make a promise. When the right time comes, they will definitely step forward, taking on the responsibility placed upon them. As soon as the heaviness of the royal presence fades from them, the trio settles down, heavily sagging in poses of complete exhaustion. Negotiations with the monarch drained their strength to the last drop. The feeling of exhaustion seeped into every movement. When they are already breaking outside, Lumina catches up with them and showers praise for how they handled the spectators. But while everyone is still recovering from the excitement after that meeting, the company decides it's time to get to the inn and finally get some sleep. And just as the spark of realization flashes in the young knight's head, her face immediately turns to pure shock. She remembers her comrades and explains she needs to check on them immediately because they have already been taken to the hospital for treatment. She politely refuses to stay with them because she cannot abandon her comrades alone at a time when they need help. Others are surprised. After all, the king even took care of especially lavish preparations for their stay, yet they still respect her loyalty. Two Beast Girl girls saw her off with warm farewell bites, asking her to pass their greetings to their comrades. They insisted she must come and find them before she left the city, so they made her promise not to disappear without saying goodbye. The knight rushes toward the hospital, raising a hand in a gesture of farewell. Everyone together sees it off with their eyes from the threshold of the temporary home. The day with its heavy events is finally coming to an end. They are preparing to settle down and stay. He was walking beside Cecilia through the city's street labyrinth and aloud was figuring out that they had no sense of direction and did not know where to go next. But the conversation was cut off as the interlocutor suddenly began to emit strange, rhythmic moans. Her ears twitched because she sensed something unusual nearby. He went after the sound through a narrow passage between two stone buildings, and there they saw a tiny girl, stuck headfirst in a crack. Her legs were wildly twitching in the air, and she was muffledly begging for help, trying to break free from this nasty trap of garbage. Strong hands of Biskin quickly tore her from that wall, and she landed on the cobblestones with a soft, dull thud. Shaking off the dust, the little traveler immediately expressed boundless gratitude. She admitted that she had hung there for a long time because no one noticed her plush toy. She introduced herself as Patra, a traveling merchant from the commercial city of Usago, and explained that she had simply been blown here by powerful winds generated during the Great Battle. The Trimtsi, out of politeness, a healer and a warrior, gave their names in response, so for the first time a cautious contact was established between them and the foreigner who found herself in trouble. Cecilia, enchanted by her small and very cute appearance, instantly pressed the girl into a suffocating embrace and began to gently cling to her. The merchants resisted the caresses, loudly complaining that she was a professional adult on a business trip, not a child to be pampered. When the playfulness faded away, the conversation shifted towards the recent chaos. One girl spoke about a terrible elder dragon that attacked the city. She froze in complete stupor when they casually started talking about how they dealt with the dragon. Her eyes suddenly widened as soon as she realized she was speaking with heroes of the present time. She couldn't comprehend that two people could take down an S-class monster. It sounded like a fairy tale, yet their calmness suggested otherwise. The girl's gaze fell on their equipment, and at that moment, her merchant intuition unmistakably grasped the immense value of what they carried. She pointed at the great mage's mantle, and the legendary paired blades Thunderlight and Galeland furrowed her brows, asking how such seemingly ordinary travelers could possess such rarities. He replied that these were royal awards from King Baal himself. They were given for their role in killing the Silverwing dragon, and along with them they received a considerable sum of gold to fund future journeys. She shone with delight, sparks flickering in her eyes at the thought of a profitable deal. Looking at their wealth and power, she immediately decided. She spoke loudly, offering herself as a personal trader for their future journey, and asked if they were ready to hire her. She continues with the same enthusiasm, precisely naming the rare items they hold. The young man is confused and cannot understand how she knows this just by looking. She replies, "The cloak of the great mage and 2 pairs of blades stand out so much that they cannot be confused to an experienced eye." After years of exhausting training, she claims that a literal encyclopedia is stored in her head, from knowledge about wild plants to details from monster parts. The boy still does not believe and demands an answer. Why a person with such a level of preparation still does not have a place in one of the great commercial auditoriums. In response, she reveals the harsh truth of her situation. Although she was promised a job in Los Angeles, local stores refused to hire a child. Because of this refusal, she sought opportunities elsewhere, but eventually found herself caught up in the whirlwind of recent events. While continuing her presentation, she outlines her two main strengths: the role of navigator of the world. She memorized countless maps and the ability to trade skillfully during negotiations when it is necessary to exchange loot. She admits, looking a bit embarrassed, that she has little practical experience, but theoretical knowledge is not lacking, it is unmatched. Leaning closer and fixing them with a hopeful, firm gaze, she makes her final request, promising that she will become an invaluable candidate for their journey if they agree to hire her. The sheer force of her character overwhelms the boy. He vainly tries to pull himself together, as if just hit by a whirlwind. Meanwhile, she holds a confident pose, coldly certain of every word. After a short pause, he admits they currently have no clear goal, and indeed a guide would be needed. He turns to his companion, the girl, the queen of beasts, to read her thoughts on this. She did not hesitate for a second. Her eyes flashed with pure delight as she firmly stated that they simply must take the little trader with them. She pulls the tiny trader into a suffocatingly tight embrace, ignoring the girl's protests, who complains that she is being treated like a child. The girl from the Beast Principality urges her not to let go. Leaving such a small one alone is unthinkable, and teasingly jokes that at any moment she could be grabbed by a stray dog or a large bird. Looking down at the traveler frozen with wide-open eyes, she admits, her short stature can indeed be alarming, but her admiration for knowledge is absolutely sincere. It is this combination of vulnerability and cleverness that makes her so eager for the merchant to join their path. The young trader, with eyes shining with joy, immediately accepts the offer to work together. The fool also takes the bait. He notices that she knows what he lacks. After a brief conversation about fair compensation, food, lodging, and commission from each deal, the company agrees on a decision. First will be a good meal and a comfortable bed. Soon they find themselves in luxurious chambers prepared by the king himself and finally allow themselves to relax. Amid the splendor, the company arranges a generous feast and finds simple joy in a warm bath, momentarily setting aside the burden of their mission. When the night thickens, her tiny new companion slowly sinks into peaceful sleep. Her face glows with satisfaction. Nearby, her new friends do not take their eyes off her, and a quiet responsibility settles on them. They see her vulnerability and watch over her while she sleeps. After a whirlwind of events during the day, the young man collapses onto the bed and exhales heavily, as if a stone is being lifted from his chest. He stares motionless at the ceiling. Slowed path finally catches up with him. Both body and thoughts are overwhelmed by fatigue as he rethinks the long day. He slowly begins to drift away, his thoughts scatter, stopping at the unexpected turn of their path. It still feels strange and unnatural to him that they found a new ally so quickly, and such a special one, like a merchant. In the quiet moment before sleep takes him, the passionate words of the Beast Queen still echo in his mind. Her unwavering desire to embark on adventures and face the unknown together remains his last gentle thought, and he finally surrenders to fatigue. He recalls the path traveled, admitting, after exile, it was Cecilia who first extended her hand to him. She still remains the same support, holding the bridge between him and new allies, such as Patra. When he slowly drifts into drowsiness, a quiet voice cuts through the room. It asks if he is not asleep yet. Like a shot, his surprise makes him sit up sharply. She is standing nearby, and it immediately becomes clear it is she who has once again set all his adventures in motion. In nightwear, she stands before him, her cheeks burn with deep, clearly visible shame. Her tone is uncertain, as if afraid of the answer. She asks if she can fall asleep next to him, and these words throw him off balance like thunder. Seeing his confusion, she hurriedly explains. The loneliness of the night again releases the fears that arose from the battles of the day, so it becomes easy for her to hurt herself and she gets scared. He stammers in response, trying to calm her, but a panic whirl is already beating in his head and he desperately tries to figure out what is happening. She admits the realization that death was very close today knocked her off track, and the thought that she might lose her place next to him is something she cannot bear. When she lies down on the bed, his heart pounds against the ribs, and the feeling of closeness at this moment seems too heavy to endure. Lying next to him, she freezes in silence and replays her actions in her head, as if seeking recognition for how her work went throughout the day. He replies, her support really meant a lot, but she doesn't stop, shifts the conversation further, and declares that now she wants to become even stronger to be able to protect him. She lifts her gaze to him, wide open eyes full of hope, cheeks still burning from blush, and quietly utters the last, simple request. Would he agree to stroke her head to support and get closer with this gesture? He can only silently stare back. His own face flashes with heat as the request presses on him, and his companion moves ever closer. He fulfills her request and gently strokes her head while she, choking with joy, laughs melodiously. Responding with this warmth, she sinks into tenderness, while he meanwhile wonders if he will manage to get even a little sleep tonight. Eventually, the fatigue from the journey overwhelms them both, and they fall together into a deep, peaceful sleep. The next morning, the petite merchant almost trembles with energy. A wide, happy smile shines on her face. She endlessly praises the fluffy softness of the beds and the deliciousness of the breakfast, and is already making plans how she will return for the same luxuries with her own earned money in the future. The trio steps outside into the clear morning, and the young man involuntarily notes how well he slept while one of them, the merchant, chatters incessantly with the same enthusiasm. The conversation turns to the plan ahead, whether to find their ally to say goodbye before setting off. They agree on the decision to head for the hotel where she stayed. As soon as they arrived at the place, a shield-bearer came out to meet them in complete despair. She sat down at the table, pressing her head to her hands. Everything around her body in silence dragged like a heavy fog, and this oppressive silence sharply contrasted with the bright morning outside. The team froze. The sense of trouble in her condition left no doubt. Approaching the table, they call to her, and she slowly raises her head as if a heavy haze presses on her eyelids. She looks confused, her eyes wide open as she recognizes the friends standing before her in the silence of the inn. Her voice barely trembles, almost a whisper, as she acknowledges their presence. When asked about the fate of the other companions, she cannot hold back. She suddenly breaks into tears and sobs, insisting that her squad has completely fallen apart. This news hits the Beast Queen like a punch. Her face twists in shock, and what she just heard immediately turns into a tragic reality. Sobbing, the warrior recounts. The clash with the S-class monster so unnerved her comrades that they could no longer hold on and move forward, so she remained the only one still standing. The young man and his companion listen silently, held by the silence, and catch the main point. That pure, merciless horror of battle can break the faith even of experienced adventurers. Fixing her gaze on the one who still cannot let go of her friend, the girl from the Beast Kingdom suddenly reaches silence in her mind. She notes, though the heart is torn by pain, though the team is already lost, yet her shield companion has not left the city. Therefore, somewhere inside there sleeps a stubborn need to continue the journey, even if she does not yet understand how to move forward alone. She sharply and frankly puts her friend in his place. Her voice trembles as she insists that if Lumina had truly decided to give up, she would be the first to know about it. This sharp outburst of a scream tears from memory deep inside a touching recollection. A little child sobbing is comforted by someone in a moment of complete helplessness. Continuing her sincere plea, she recalls their past and insists that even now she would respond with the same kindness, the very same with which she met him the first time when they exchanged names. Reaches out a hand and with this gesture reminds Lumini of the promise they made to each other, to set out on a journey and explore the world together. She has never broken her word. The protector, captivated by such devotion, collapses weakly and falls into the arms of her friend. She bursts into tears, and the young man nearby confirms, staying close to her strength will be a true relief for them. The warrior, shining through tears, accepts the invitation and solemnly vows to become an unbreakable shield for the company and protect each one of them. When the wave of emotions subsides a little, the tiny merchant steps forward to introduce herself and declares that she wants to join Patra on this journey. The arrival of the newcomer instantly triggers a misunderstanding. The fighter innocently asks if two of his companions are raising a little girl together, and immediately a whole wave of frightened denials and outraged protests erupts. She was far from the hustle and bustle. The girl from the Beast Kings raced through the realm of shadows where flames roared wildly. The air trembled with the rumble of destruction, but she did not slow down. Her delicate figure dissolved into a swift blur against the backdrop of chaos and deadly surroundings. Her breathing came in ragged, convulsive gasps, and her face shone with sweat and despair as she squeezed out her last strength. Every muscle begged to give up and stop, but the relentlessness of the mission pushed her forward through the debris. She knew she had to find the adventurer strong enough to withstand the power of Sezuku until everything vanished. In Amon village, behind the counter of an ordinary shop, the tiny merchant stands straight and confident. A spark of excitement for a profitable trade flashes in her eyes. She declares that she wants to buy a huge amount of food at once and extends a bundle of herbs she brought with her. The seller is momentarily confused. He sees how she flawlessly evaluates the selected ingredients suitable for potions and cannot believe that such a young traveler is capable of this. Impressed by her skill, he lowers the price and additionally throws in some seasonal vegetables, which sincerely surprises her companion standing nearby. Thanks to her successful negotiations, the companions cannot hold back. They shower her with warmth and affection, although she clearly does not like it and finds it too improper. Two girls from the Beast King's clan playfully pinch her soft cheeks and praise her as their reliable merchant. She resists and snorts, saying it's not about the texture of her face, she just ends up basking in the compliments. In a moment, the young man takes on the heaviest task, carefully placing the newly acquired supplies into a sturdy wooden box. He works with a blissful confidence, as the full set will greatly ease their path. The creak of wood sliding over the surface echoes until he, fastening the lid, prepares the cargo for transport. Having left the kingdom of Baal, they set out without a clear goal. After several days of travel, the group finally reached this quiet settlement. Ammon Village serves as an important stop. Here they can rest and replenish supplies that are already dwindling before their eyes. The village is peaceful, simple houses and open paths offer a brief respite from all worries and uncertainty. Against the backdrop of their group, the tiny merchant straightens up, radiates pride, and declares that such matters are a trifle for her at her level. Her companions nod in response. It was her impeccable knowledge of the surrounding lands that brought them to this village in the first place. They sincerely thank her. Her skill not only shortened the travel time, but also ensured that on the next leg of the journey they would not go hungry. When the travelers prepare to set off, a young man starts a conversation with the local villagers gathered nearby. One of them asks if they have encountered any adventures on the road and adds that travelers coming from the side of Baal usually face difficulties. This question throws him off balance. He freezes in confusion and does not understand what specific dangers the villager meant. He shifts his gaze to his companions and catches the same confusion in their eyes, while the peasants' faces grow darker with gloom. Feeling the tension change in the air, he directly asks if something recent has happened that they should know about. The silence after his words becomes oppressive. It seems the path they just took is much more dangerous than they thought. The head of the village, Ammon, greets him and his companions warmly. An elderly man with a kind face and glasses extends a friendly gesture and invites the travelers into the modest settlement, welcoming them with the hospitality of his people. Expressing gratitude and agreeing to rest at the local tavern, the company falls silent to listen. The elder brings them to the topic he intends to discuss. Everything is kept in a polite tone. The travelers long for a moment of rest after the long journey, but at the same time do not take their eyes off him. Their curiosity is kindled by his very demand. He raises rumors that other villagers have already brought them about a fire in the district. The elder's face frowns as he confirms. The tragedy occurred in the mighty forest near the Elven Junction, a sanctuary for the Fey folk, and he bitterly laments the numerous victims reported from Blaze. Noticing how Cecilia's mood suddenly changed, he persistently asks if everything is all right. She confesses, her people once traded with the fairies, and in Agaras the situation is already under control. The local guild is monitoring the developments. Cecilia's voice reveals concern and anxiety for their former partners. Katra intensifies the tension of the moment. He calls the Fae a noble race that perceives the world with sharper senses and possesses powerful magic, so a fire of this scale becomes even more devastating for them. His silent thoughts whirl wildly, outlining the consequences of this catastrophe. He is guided by a natural gift of a healer. He offers his services to the leader without hesitation, hoping to help those who survived the hellish fire. But their conversation is abruptly interrupted by a frightened peasant who opens the door and rushes across the empty room, shouting that a terrible disaster has occurred at the village gates. The messenger sharply gasps for air and spills the news. The elf was found unconscious near the very entrance, covered in wounds. Wasting not a second, he springs into action, urging others to follow him and orders to immediately take him to the injured. As soon as they reach the scene, their eyes fall on a young elf. She is still holding on to consciousness, desperately clinging to reality, her body covered in wounds, her clothes torn. He, along with his friends, freezes, exchanging looks in silent determination, and each understands that disaster has struck their doorstep in full, terrible force. She lies motionless on a simple wooden bed, her breathing barely noticeable. Above her stand the village chief and the fool. The young man breaks the heavy silence, speaking quietly and slowly, asking how she feels. Her condition is critical. The elder reports, ordinary potions no longer work on the terrible burns and infected wounds that have disfigured her skin. Even when healing magic flows continuously over her, he is certain she won't make it until morning. This cold assessment immediately shakes the ground beneath her feet. Cecilia noticeably trembles and freezes, as if shocked by the words. He looks at her from head to toe. The young healer assesses how severe the wounds are and how fever burns her body. he quietly begins to utter spells, calling gentle healing winds to strengthen and mend the exhausted fae. Suddenly, he releases a wave of magical energy. The word heal spreads through the room and bright light covers the bed. The force bursting out throws both the chief and the village doctor off balance. Both freeze with wide-open eyes in shock. The elder immediately objects. He warns that such a trick requires a whole day of mana and it could break his body, but Cecilia sharply cuts off his words with a confident, fierce exclamation. She, together with Mia and Patra, stands shoulder to shoulder behind their friend and does not doubt that he is capable of doing what seems impossible. He does not retreat. On his face are frozen both fatigue and unwavering determination as he pleads for a chance to save her. He speaks on behalf of everyone, emphasizing their shared desire to see the girl recover. Catching the flame in his gaze, the elder finally gives in. Since he was the one who stepped forward, they will have to trust him. The decision was made and they immediately gather around him. Voices merge into a single chorus of support, while everyone offers any help they can. The village doctor tirelessly cares, prepares clean water and delivers necessary supplies while the injured elven girl lies unconscious and her life hangs in the balance. Beside him, his companions pause for a moment to rest and gather strength, but their faces are still oppressed by fear of the exhausting work ahead. Then he initiates an exhausting process. His hands flare with a soft, even glow as he pours mana into the broken body of the girl, and everyone around silently freezes in tense anticipation. After some time, he exhales heavily and tiredly. The wounds outside have already closed, but inside everything is destroyed much deeper. Despite this, he feels a strange surge of strength and understands the blessing orb sharply increases his recovery, multiplying the amount of healing output. Meanwhile, he continues to carefully do his delicate work, but suddenly he starts to be gnawed by how exactly she was hurt, why she was alone, and what happened to her squad if she was left with such cruel battle scars including burns. Suddenly, he is overwhelmed by a painful realization. His eyes widen in shock as he examines the discovery hidden beneath the surface of her trauma. For a moment, he is breathless. He jerks his head sharply to shake off the creeping exhaustion and keeps it to himself. He has no right to falter even for a moment and will not allow the treatment to fail right now, even if the body pays for it with pain. Under his palms, the girl finally stirs. Through a barely audible, painful whisper, she utters a name that seems to hold a secret deeper than usual: Lady Serena. She remains a silent center of his efforts until she has to sneak through his own determination. He already understands. This is the turning point that decides the fate of both of them. A silent vow burns in his gaze to pull her back from the very edge, and then the silence is broken by a voice. Someone hands him fresh water to help with the exhausting work. While he accepts the help, the King of Beasts girl Cecilia is urged to leave the room and rest. She politely refuses. She stands firm and says she will stay nearby to support him as long as needed, even when fatigue is already pulling. She suddenly stops, her ears twitch because she feels the air changing. The energy coming from the room throws her off course and she again directs her gaze to the door. She watches him through the crack and notices a strange, lively tint of healing magic. A thought flashes. This light was not there before. Either it marks the royal equipment he is dressed in, or he has finally mastered the art of silent spells. He is literally soaked with sweat, and tension tightens his face. He has to maintain such a high level of magical output. The space around him trembles, golden sparks hiss in the air, and each one reveals how insanely focused he is. Seeing him like this, she cannot help but recall their first meeting. Back then he seemed unreliable, almost pitiful. But now the iron calm in his gaze and firm, unwavering resolve change everything. He looks transformed, and his posture makes her feel a new weight and causes an indecent heat to rise to her cheeks. In the air, a quiet, encouraging whisper seems to hang like a silent prayer of confidence that he has enough strength to carry this through to the very end. Finally, the trial ends. He weakly collapses on the bed, completely exhausted, while the first light of morning slowly creeps from the horizon. He freezes and drinks in the ceiling with his eyes, as if stunned, and the burden of that night finally catches up with his exhausted body. He slowly opens his eyelids. The ceiling looks foreign as he tries to piece together what surrounds him. A flash of memory about the harsh healing procedure runs through his head, and he freezes with the thought, where has he ended up and what happened after he suddenly collapsed? Suddenly he jerks upright, gasping for air. Realization hits him like a blow to the body. He cannot believe he fell asleep in the middle of such a critical situation. At that moment, the door slides open, and Cecilia peeks in. Her face brightens with relief as soon as she sees he is conscious. He does not let her utter a word immediately. In a frantic impulse, he begins to question her about the condition of the elven girl. She dispels his anxiety with her bright smile, explaining that the patient's condition is truly incredibly good. She can already walk. The woman says she will go change clothes and immediately returns to the door. At the end, she addresses the girl and calls her by the name that uniquely and solely defines her. The elf girl steps over the threshold into the room. Her appearance no longer resembles the bloody, sweaty shock she was in just moments before. Now she looks different. With wide-open, curious eyes, she stares at him and asks if it is really him, the very one called a fool. He can only respond with a quiet, simple confirmation while carefully examining her amazing recovery. Without hesitating for a second, she falls into a deep, respectful bow. Her voice trembles with emotion as she utters sincere, profound words of gratitude, acknowledging it is he who keeps her alive to this day. He looks at her warily and asks if she still has any pain or unpleasant sensation. Solon shakes her head. She says Cecilia told her everything, how he risked himself and refused to rest until she was safe. She continues and says that even the village doctor was stunned. He called her recovery a true miracle. Her eyes fill with tears as she glances at the group and says that standing on her own feet again is a gift she fully owes to their efforts. Realizing this, he is overwhelmed by a wave of pure, unadulterated relief. His eyes immediately fill with tears as he understands that his desperate risk paid off. And only when the tension finally subsides do Cecilia and Patra watch the scene with warm, restrained smiles. Later, Solon changes the subject. She's curious about what brought such skilled healers to their village. She begins the story and says she comes from the Elven Shore in the northeast. As soon as the name of her home is mentioned, a memory flashes in the young man's mind. He once heard rumors about a terrible fire that devastated those lands. Choking with emotion, she tells of the pure desperation that forced her to flee. She speaks of Lady Serena and the burden of responsibility that fell on her shoulders. She honestly admits she rushed forward blindly, in panic, fearing that any delay would result in complete defeat directly for her people. The truth she reveals chills. The god of fire Siskiyou was born, one of the legendary 4 divine calamities known as the dungeon disasters. This terrible truth strikes straight into the hearts of her companions as they finally piece together where those terrible burns came from, which almost took her life. She continues the harsh tale, how the flames of these beings devoured the forest and took the lives of many of her kin. Some of the Fae managed to hide in a cave, but their current situation remains a grim unknown. During the interrogation about how she is so certain about the attacker, she shifts her gaze heavily onto her young questioners. She explains during their evacuation a terrible earthquake occurred and she is certain it was the bloody birth of a new dungeon. In her people's ancient legends, there is a tale. 4 divine beasts are capable of creating such terrifying labyrinths. Her primary task is to reach the guild in Agarsi to request reinforcements for the invasion squad, following Lady Serena's orders. But exhaustion overtook her before she could reach the destination. The rest had to face the bitter truth. A threat awaited them that could turn into a disaster. He froze, turning his back, crushed by burning remorse. The realization that his own overconfidence could have taken someone's life pressed from within, never letting go for a moment. He had never truly believed that the legends of the 4 divine catastrophes would come to life in reality, yet they were already before his eyes, a formidable threat he could not foresee. When his thoughts finally grew heavy and settled, Solon spoke words of sincere gratitude with a warm smile and assured that she would one day repay them for their kindness. She explained that she had to leave for Agara immediately. She feared that any further delay would lead to the point of no return. But just as she was about to take a step, he sharply turned and shouted at her loudly, telling her she was wasting time. She shuddered from the sudden burst of words, her gaze fixed on him as he stepped forward with firm, almost iron determination. He did not hesitate for a moment. He directly asked if they could join her subjugation mission, as he was not going to leave her alone facing such danger. She trembled from shock and her voice broke as she asked why he would risk such a reckless proposal at all. It was unthinkable for her to drag people who had just saved her life into a clash with a divine catastrophe. It was a terrifying burden no one could bear. Despite her protests, he raised his voice sharply and reminded her of their experience at the ball, where they had already managed to conquer an S-class monster. He begged her, his eyes burning with a fierce need to protect others, and said that if there was a chance to save someone's life, he would do whatever was necessary. He could not just watch her walk away toward inevitable deals. Seeing his steadfastness, Cecilia and Mia stepped forward alongside, their faces also frozen in firm conviction. They reminded Solon that the king himself had ordered them to help with the conquest and insisted She did not have to bear the burden of her village's fate alone. Together, they promised to dedicate their strength to her cause. They froze in place, eyes wide with shock, as they looked at what was unfolding before them. They glanced through what remained of the elven forest. Now it had turned into a cemetery of blackened trunks, and ash slowly drifted in the air. He grumbled that the destruction was far worse than he had imagined, while Solon, despite her own fatigue, urged them forward to the cave where her people sought refuge. She explained, although somewhere still burned, she would first lead them to the chieftain. She silently watched as Cecilia staggered and fell. When the meaning struck her head, her voice broke with a tremble. The trees she once knew had vanished, replaced by a bloody scene of fallen bodies lying around. He caught her despair with his gaze, then reached out his hand to support her, quietly explaining, "Shock after so many of their relatives died in this hell is a completely natural reaction." As they walked, Mia watched the elf with anxiety, trying to believe that she was really okay. And he silently admired the strength one must have to hold together in the face of such tragedy. They were making their way through the charred remains, and the road ahead was obscured by fragments of the burnt ruins. She led them forward, urging them on, saying the cave was very close, they just needed to go a little further along that passage deep inside. She brings them to the cave, but a sudden deafening roar interrupts their steps. A wave of rumble vibrates in the very bones. Fall clutches his head, unable to recover from the feeling of presence. It is ancient and extraordinarily evil, unlike any ordinary monster. Clearly before them in the depths flickers a radiant boundary there. In the distance, it is clearly visible how someone in a hopeless effort breaks through the disaster that can no longer hide its defeat. Together with others, she catches the exhausting scream for Lady Serena, while the whole company watches a terrible demonstration of magical power. Nearby, small fairies huddle together in fear, their figures trembling under the excessive pressure pouring from the very heart of the clash. She stands stubbornly and defiantly under the mighty bird of living flame. It spreads its wings and floods the battlefield with sharp orange glow. The sharp-crowned elven face is frozen like armor-focused, cold determination as she prepares to confront the celestial beast. Her long hair slices the heat from the creature's aura. This is Suzaku, one of the 4 divine calamities, a creature born for total destruction. When the team realizes that Lady Serena, leader of the fairies, is fighting this monster one-on-one, they are stunned by the scale of the threat. But the fool quickly breaks out of the stupor. He understands that they cannot just stand aside while their ally faces inevitable death. He urges the rest and pushes them forward, declaring that they are obliged to save the fairies who still remain, even though a raging hell spreads around. Meanwhile, Serena stands firmly in place, her voice cutting through smoke and flame. She swears she will not give this disaster a single more soul from her kin. She feels the very earth beneath her begin to bend and crack, as energies that collided head-on squeeze and tear her apart. She squeezes every ounce of strength from herself and raises her staff, directing a stream of magical energy straight against the bird's blazing attack. The air hums with power, and when their forces meet, a flash of light and heat blinds everything around. When the forces collided, she was suddenly overwhelmed by a giant explosion. The space was flooded with scorching white light that threatened to burn everything left behind. Despair cracks in her voice with every scream it echoes across the glade, while the young traveler feels an unbearable weight suddenly pressing down on him. He senses that somewhere here a cursed, ancient, and evil gaze is fixed on this place, and the pressure is so solid that the air seems to turn to lead. He freezes at the scale of the catastrophe unfolding before him and has just realized. This is a creation of higher powers, a divine calamity unlike anything he has seen before, even the silver-winged ancient dragon. His consciousness barely holds him. The mere presence of the creature has paralyzed his body, and his gaze is pinned to the spot as he vainly tries to draw even a breath into his lungs. The fiery bird beast takes off and in a moment dissolves in the distance. The suffocating haze finally weakens. He watches the distant silhouette of evil. The direct threat has retreated, but behind remains a scorched trail. Shaking off the last remnants of fear, he jerked and sharply turned to reality as a frightened voice of comrades sounded nearby. Cecilia and Mia immediately appeared beside him, their worried and tense faces torn by doubts. They stubbornly examined him to make sure the creature that had just disappeared had not touched him. He instantly pulls himself together and urges the group on. Wasting time standing still is never an option. She replies that they have already moved the wounded elf to a safe place at the nearest cave. The magical barrier, which lasted only a moment longer, kept her from dying despite the terrible wounds. In the cold depths of the cave where shadows fall heavily, the elf Solene, wounded and exhausted, leans beside the body of her unconscious leader. Her voice trembles as she begs for any sign in response. Nearby, the fairies stand still watching silently and grimly, their hope flickering in the light like a candle flame about to go out. Slowly, the chieftainess opens her eyelids, her gaze trembles and is still weak, but there is a faint glimmer of recognition in it. She quietly whispers Salni, acknowledging that the girl has kept her promise. She brought real, skilled adventurers to help them. Solon is overwhelmed with emotion and with tears in her eyes assures her leader, these aliens are reliable and have already saved her life. She earnestly appeals to the chief, begging him to trust them, convinced that they will be the key to turning the course of events and eventually restoring what was lost to their shattered forest home. She sharply raises her gaze, almost gasping, as a young man approaches her and apologizes for the delay. He calls himself a fool, says he is a healer, and extends a request to be allowed to examine her wounds. She nods in agreement with relief, hoping this will bring respite from the pain. As soon as he enters the research, an icy horror flashes across his face. He freezes, unable to believe his own vision. The blood in her veins seems to rise and boil, something he has never seen before. She only shudders from shock and can only stare back motionlessly, her fear reflected in his eyes. Summoning the courage to help, he directs all his energy and casts a healing spell. For a moment it seems to work. A flicker of hope lights up on her face. He clings to the thought that if he continues to pour mana into this saving surge without stopping, he will be able to keep her condition from worsening. But the victory is short-lived. The wounds begin to melt faster than he can close them. In agony where it hurts her the most, Serena speaks with oppressive calm, admitting her own life is a small price to pay just to save her people. The heart is wounded by the realization from the smoldering heat left after Sasako. It literally burns her from within, destroying the body layer by layer. Hearing this, she breaks down and falls into pleading with her own leader not to speak aloud of such sacrifices. Serena is immediately filled with tears, and her majestic restraint finally cracks under the weight of shared despair. He sinks into oppressive silence, his hand slides to his chin, and in despair he feverishly searches for a way out. Nearby, two-beast girl Ken watch with growing horror at what is happening, feeling that the healer's attempts can no longer stop the wave of magical curse. OF. Overwhelmed by grief, she sinks to the ground, choking on words as she begs him to save the one who means everything to their family. Her tears flow freely and fall onto the cave floor, a silent testament to the deep bond that unites them. He responds with a quiet, supportive smile and reaches out his hand to calm her, explaining that the failure was not due to a lack of hope, just that the standard methods did not cope with this particular challenge, hinting that his techniques are not yet exhausted. He suddenly realizes, unconsciously, he had been suppressing his own potential all this time. Remembering the healing he performed for Solene the day before, he understands he himself was binding himself without even noticing it. While he is lost in thought, Cecilia interrupts and says that his healing magic looked different this time than usual. She explains, the aura surrounding the spell became wider and brighter. He might not have noticed it, but she did. She continues excitedly, pointing, since he managed to summon such a huge fireball, it is logical that his healing abilities have also grown to a new level. She suggests that now he can unleash high-level spellstones he couldn't even imagine before. This thought throws him off track. He admits that he has fixated on the crisis itself and failed to see the bigger picture. Cecilia reminds him of his unique advantage, the seemingly limitless reserve of mana that he has not yet fully used. Noticing his hesitation, she boosts his confidence and insists, any result becomes real if he truly believes in it. She insists that unshakable conviction in one's own success is the strongest weapon he can have. Her words seem to hit him directly and he already finds himself agreeing with her logic. Cecilia shines with pride, her encouragement worked just as she had hoped. At the mention of the desperate struggle with the fiery disaster, he gasps for breath. The battle has already given him that very vital lesson. He is capable of much more than he once imagined. And right then, on the spot, he makes the decision to stop imposing arbitrary limits on his own strength. Gathering new determination, he once again fully focuses on what lies ahead. He vows to save Serenade despite any obstacles, and however many times he must try, his stubbornness flares even brighter than before. He unleashes all his power without reserve. A dazzling light bursts from his palms, exploding outward as soon as he calls upon the peak of restoration. Perfect healing. This sharp surge of power throws his companions off their steady breathing. They freeze, eyes wide open, and fix their gaze on the impossible appearing before them. Frozen, they fix their gaze on the event. Under the influence of divine radiance, the dark necrotic curse clinging to Serena's skin begins to melt, replaced by a soft shimmer as her body stitches itself back together. When the last echo of corruption disappears, she abruptly sits up and freezes, staring at her restored hands. A silent miracle grips her chest. Her family nearby instantly jumps closer, and cries of relief and joy echo through the clear air. She is surrounded by crying relatives, while the young healer does not take his eyes off his own palms. His fingers barely tremble as he realizes what he has just done, slowly overwhelmed by heavy understanding. He can hardly believe it, but reality cannot be denied. He has mastered the reserve of spells for the highest ranks of the priesthood, the only flawless restoration for a single target, which few even hope to reach. Glancing at his companion in bee skin, he suddenly becomes convinced. She was right. His inexhaustible mana reserve and such magical power erase boundaries. Now he truly can do anything he wants. His thoughts are interrupted by the fairy leader herself. She stands amid a blooming sea of flowers. On her face is deep gratitude, and she addresses him by name, thanking him for sparing her life. She begins with sincere and deep thanks to the group for undertaking the deadly mission to overthrow Sizikilla. Then, relying on information from Solna, she says, Firebird retreated east, and there, at a new location, a dangerous dungeon has appeared. She hears that powerful monsters will soon rise in that direction, so she insists on help since her people's current state does not allow them to intervene directly. Softly smiling, she extends a shining pendant and explains, it carries a sacred blessing from the fairy folk. The young traveler freezes, staring at the artifact. The intricate pattern catches the light and shimmers as she holds the pendant, allowing him to take it. While two Beastrider girls jokingly argue over who should carry this precious talisman, they finally agree on one thing, to give it to the one who keeps everyone on their feet. She may curse, pressing the young healer with the thought that the amulet should be worn for self-protection, and earnestly demands he return alive from the coming battle. She shifts her gaze to the young elf who has suffered so much pain and addresses her in a quiet, confident tone, as if she already understands everything. The girl flinches from the sudden attention and can only bewilderedly open her eyes wide and utter a fragmented, breathless reply. After this, she extends a beautifully crafted bowstring and says that this weapon is meant to spin up and enhance the natural magical abilities of the one who holds it, much stronger than any ordinary armor. It is a gift to push the girl toward the trials that lie ahead. Overwhelmed by this gesture of trust and the burden of responsibility, the young elf cannot hold back tears. Her eyes fill with moisture. Her chieftain's kindness penetrates to the very heart, bridging the gap between the suffering she has endured and her new purpose. She grips the bow tightly, not letting go for a moment, and swears now her resolve is hardened. She must be useful to the entire company. Her companions only look back, giving supportive smiles. Their bonds grow only stronger as they prepare to set out and leave behind the fairy tale kingdom of the Fae. The mystical forest remains behind. The road leads back to the bustling streets of the kingdom of Augars. Above the stone houses hangs the sign of the Travelers Guild. It clearly indicates that the hero is once again awaited by a world of deals, contracts, and quests. A sunbeam falls on the stone pavement as the knight strides down the corridor with a clear purpose. Her armored boots echo a rhythmic tapping on the floor. Her upright posture and tense determination reveal both duty and urgency. Her gaze does not waver for a moment. She keeps her course toward her goal. She reaches the massive doors, knocks on them with a confident hand, and introduces herself. Inside, a man sitting at a desk cluttered with books and papers notices her arrival and nods to invite her into the office. Holy Knight, adventurer of Class S, Katarina reports. Having just learned about the emergency mission, she arrived immediately. She addresses her master and asks if he was the one who summoned her, seeking to confirm how catastrophic the situation is. The master raises his gaze, his face becomes stern as he prepares to announce the difficult mission ahead. Defeat of the divine disaster, Sizikilla. In the brilliantly furnished office, the guild master laid out a series of alarming reports before him. He named the appearance of an S-level monster in Beryl, the collapse of the local guild following this, and spoke of a giant forest fire raging deep in the great forest near Augars. According to him, these were not coincidences. All events formed a single overall disruption that required immediate attention. He confirmed these disasters were the reason he summoned his best S-level adventurer. With a focused, grim face, he officially placed a colossal task on her shoulders to kill Suzaku, one of the 4 divine beasts known as dungeon disasters, believed to be the source of the current chaos. She accepted the mission without any delay, risking success and her own life, as well as the guild's honor. In response, the master assured her, she would not enter this deadly danger alone. He promised to send other S-class adventurers to reinforce her squad before the upcoming battle. Before departure, he added one last objective to her orders. He insisted that she continue searching for the beastkin woman Cecilia, whose current whereabouts remained a priority alongside the real threat of the divine beast. While the guild master's orders set new wheels of fate in motion, the company of companions involuntarily gathered together, drawn by both fate and a shared goal. The burden of the upcoming journey hung in the air. Before the unknown, they had to stand together. Finally, they reached the entrance to the dungeon of Sizikand. Immediately, a pressure so strong fell upon them that it was hard to breathe. At the very passage hung a clear warning sign: only those with SS class or higher were allowed here. The atmosphere in this place was thick, like an old, stuffy, and oppressive power. As they delved deeper, the young man could not take his eyes off. The divine being was able to change the very earth as if tailoring it to their presence. His companion confirmed the suspicion, pointing out that the sharp transformations in the cave were direct proof that Suzaku was hiding nearby and that it was pulling the world up to its own limits. Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed through the tunnel's clear, heavy rhythm of massive wings. He immediately tensed, keeping all senses at maximum alertness while his friends warned him not to lose vigilance. The master of this dungeon no longer seemed like something from the future. He had become a real threat rapidly approaching. Suddenly, he and the whole company are covered by a swarm of aggressive, overly large wasps. The girls scream hysterically in terror, but the elf Solene does not move, calmly recognizing monsters in them. Their swarm seems to have been raised from the nest, so they lost control. Wasting no time, she immediately chooses the baby wasps as a target and is already preparing to strike from. With a steady, focused gaze, she launches a series of multilocks. Her magical bow flares with otherworldly energy. She releases a devastating dispersal arrow, which, breaking into pursuing shots, raises a storm of guided projectiles that unfailingly pierce every insect in the swarm. Moment of deaf silence covers theme, and it is broken only by a shared gasp of air from shock. The group cannot believe their eyes. They freeze, staring into the empty space where just a moment ago a threat loomed, stunned by the flawless precision of that spectacle. Especially frightened and wide-eyed are Cecilia and Maiathi. Find it hard to comprehend how their new companion swept away the entire swarm in one breath. Noticing their surprise, she responds with a restrained smile and explains. As a magical archer, she works with a special weapon, a magical bow. Channeling her own mana through the bow and the very frame, she can create various types of magical arrows, but if needed, she can still shoot ordinary, physical ones. She continues, and softness dawns in her gaze. Alongside determination, warmth breaks through. She swears she will do everything in her power to protect every party member and openly says how much she looks forward to the shared journey. Her words cut through the tension, and the group's friendly cohesion flares up again as if relief has come. The party delves deeper and deeper into the suffocating darkness of the cave. The light from their equipment barely cuts through the gloom, and the dungeon walls close in around them as the air grows thicker and heavier with each step. As they move further, a strange realization begins to settle in. There is not a single creature nearby. The tunnels greet them with eerie silence. Not even the usual weepers, which typically swarm at such depths, are visible here. They stop and carefully scan the darkness, searching for any hint of movement. Lumina breaks the silence. The stench of Sizak covers everything completely, drowning out any other smells, making it simply impossible to track other threats. The rest only sense a few barely noticeable traces, but the fiery aura of the divine beast looms over them as an imperceptible burden. It clearly hints that they are already very close to the heart of this catastrophe. She held the shield raised and spoke quietly but firmly, warning the others they must move with extreme caution. In the dungeon, the air grew thick, and she understood an ambush could come at any moment. Before the group could take another step, a giant shadow fell upon Thema, massive, wingless, dragon-like creature, as if it had appeared straight from the darkness. Its dark, cracked scales and fierce gaze made the experienced travelers look like children beside it. This was no ordinary beast. Before them stood Fafnir, the legendary S-class monster whose very name was etched into Dread's memory. The realization hit the team like a blow to the chest. They all went pale and, raising their heads, stared at the gigantic predator. Foul's mind was wildly restless as he replayed the grim stories in his head about those who entered the dragon's lands and never returned. He was unsettled by how a creature with such incredible power could hide so close to the dungeon entrance far from the depths where it seemingly belonged. The secret did not have time to draw him into long reflections. The dragon let out a dull, guttural growl and prepared to take off. With a sharp cry, he ordered everyone to immediately take combat positions. In response, the skeleton bearer briefly grasped the bladed steel, saying piercingly as soon as it slipped from the sheath. She froze in stance, bracing herself, and fixed her gaze on every movement of the monster. Cecilia was the first to break away from her place. She jumped straight into the thick, letting out a fierce battle cry from her chest to divert the beast's attention onto herself. When the blow pierced her skin armor with a sizzle and the silver-armored lunge reached its target, the knight realized with anxiety. Fafnir's hide was denser than that of the silver-winged ancient dragon they had already fought. Noticing the moment when the beast's defense wavered, the young leader sharply called to the archer to use this pause and finish the breach. She did not hesitate for a moment. The magic in her palms buzzed, radiating celestial energy as she drew back the bowstring. She barely whispered a prayer for her light to pierce the iron-like scales, then released a wave of homing arrows. They surged forward, chasing the dragon with bursts of pure sorceress power. The dust settles as the powerful body of the winged, wingless dragon collapses and crashes to the ground. Akir breaks free from the crowd, confidently believing the fight is over. While a young man stands frozen nearby with hope and a shadow of doubt in his eyes, he searches for the answer whether the monster is truly dead. His doubts instantly shatter. From the creature's wounds emerges a strange glow. He freezes in horror and watches as the body begins to close back up, stitching itself right before his eyes, and he realizes that a monster of this caliber cannot fall so easily. The true power of the dragon is revealed. A terrifying ability to self-heal in seconds restores its shattered body. The threat flares up. Agin's shield guardian panics, calls for the protective barrier, and braces for a shield strike. Her voice cuts through the tension, urgent and pressed by fear. Despite all attempts, the counterattack overwhelms them with a wave. The adventurers recoil and tremble as they try to regroup. The elf trembles and gasps for air. Her mana is depleted. She cannot cast another spell. The realization settles in their minds: they are doomed to die. When hope fades, three figures burst into the moment with stunning force. One raises a spatial explosion that shakes the surroundings. The second weaves a cunning cage of barriers to hold the beast. The third saturates the air with crackling electric glow of the element with the attribute of thunder. After their coordinated strike, a catastrophic explosion erupts, a blinding shockwave of power that surpasses everything the group was previously capable of. When the glow fades, three newcomers stand unshaken and remain unharmed amid the total destruction. The young man freezes with wide-open eyes and cannot catch his breath. Fragmented thoughts surface in his mind as he tries to comprehend what he just witnessed. He cannot fathom how someone could defeat an S-class monster with a single blow, a monster that nearly wiped his squad off the face of the earth. One of the newcomers, a woman wearing glasses, looks down with a cold, detached gaze, as if dismissing the entire encounter as trivial with a single gesture. She calmly acknowledges the coordinated work of her companions, clearly indicating, for them, this was a routine matter, nothing more, just a routine task. She brushes off the laughter from the kicks and states that wielding such power is as natural as breathing. Nearby, Enchanter nods. He acknowledges the dragon's weakness to lightning and proudly says he can enhance her incredible sword strikes. The measured conversation between the two suddenly breaks. A third, fierce warrior bursts into the frame, sharply demanding an explanation as to why they are wasting time when enemies still remain on the battlefield. Without wasting a second, the fighter abruptly leaps forward, her fist blazing with colossal power, and she delivers a devastating blow to the opponent, even calling it a smash. She savors the chaos, and with every new obstacle, her excitement grows. She laughs when she encounters a person capable of stopping her aggressive charge. Her wild rampage is suddenly cut short. Around her, a shimmering cage of energy flares from the air, a barrier prison conjured into reality by her own allies to restrain her wild impulses. They exhale with relief and disdain at her predictability. Her bloodthirstiness makes her a risk that must be cooled before they can focus on their true objectives. She steps forward to ease the tension. In armor, the knight introduces herself Katarina. Then she names herself the leader of the S-Class Party Griffin and sincerely apologizes for her companion's reckless behavior. The group reveals themselves. They are members of Agar's guild, High Wizard Sarashale, support Mage Sane, and the reserved solo warrior Riane, and together they explain that they were dispatched to investigate this territory. As soon as the knight hears the name of his own guild, a deep recognition flashes across his face. The name Agar carries a palpable reputational weight for him. She listens as the young man introduces himself, calling himself a fool and a healer. Her gaze slides over the beastman in his company, and she immediately notices how similarly their groups are composed. Yet her voice does not soften. She warns that this forest has been reclassified as a disaster-level catastrophe zone. She insists they leave, repeating that there can be no sense in wasting lives recklessly by confronting an S-class threat they cannot overcome. Her order is final. They must immediately turn around. As soon as the young healer shudders with surprise, she clarifies their own tasks. She says that her guild has come to destroy the creature responsible for the destruction of the forest. He meets her warning with a brief nod but does not back down. He makes it clear that their goals coincide. Inside himself, he concludes, if the guild augur receives the same request for subjugation and has the power to destroy a creature like Fafnir with a single blow, then there can be no doubt they are definitely an S-class force. While his companions gather behind, he confidently proclaims their goal to defeat Suzaku, the creator of the dungeon itself. After this, she freezes, narrows her eyes, and checks the intentionality of their aim. She skeptically clarifies their official rank, doubting that they truly grasp the scale of the challenge posed by one of the 4 divine catastrophes. She awkwardly admits their step towards B-rank was made only recently, and this admission throws her and her companion with the shield into complete prostration. She immediately resolutely objects. The adventurers of B-rank have no right to enter the territory of the beast god. She holds firm and does not let them continue, emphasizing, even S-class parties cannot count on guaranteed success against the divine beast. But as soon as this was said, her sharp mind instantly switched and she accurately guessed that he must have some special ability or hidden power since he states it so confidently. He freezes in shock. She saw the truth so quickly. A burst of silence is broken by the wounded elf. Her voice trembles, but there is clear stubbornness in it as she declares that she cannot just stand aside while the house burns down to ashes and the can is taken from it. Her words push him and he utters the final, audacious ultimatum without any concessions. Despite the threat, they still move forward. He stands firm, and beside him the elven girl is the first to find words. Her voice cuts through the silence and sounds stubbornly. She declares that they promised to defeat Siska together, and this suddenly disrupts the rhythm of the holy night. Following her example, the rest of the assembly voiced their own convictions. The young beastkin girl solemnly swears to protect everyone and fight to the end, no matter the cost, while the shield-bearer immediately reminds them of their royal mandate from the kingdom of Baal and without looking back, refuses to abandon their duty. They converge on one goal, and the young leader draws a line shouting his last word, declaring that they have their own objectives to achieve, so they can no longer turn back. Her suspicions of the Holy Knight are confirmed by his words, and she immediately understands. These are the same travelers who truly managed to overthrow the Silverwing ancient dragon. She acknowledges their impressive bravery and takes into account that they know about the divine beasts but still does not move. Her decision is firm, and she will not allow their potential to be wasted in a battle they cannot win. She reaches for the blade. Her face softens, bitterness of guilt flashing in it as she prepares to take everything into her own hands. She tells them, by the time they come to their senses, her own team will have already dealt with Suzaku, and she adds quiet apologies for the sharp move she is about to make. Suddenly, a shimmering cage of magical energy bursts from the ground, a barrier prison that instantly encloses and traps the entire group. A young man shouts loudly, insistently reminding his kidnapper that travelers should be allies, not enemies, but his words crash against the deaf walls of indifference. She will not move at his pleading. Her face is calm as she lays out her own motives. She insists, this lockdown is only a temporary measure to protect them, and by refusing to give up on such prospects, she does not allow these chances to fade before the future conflict comes into play. Turning her back to the cage, the knightess addresses her own comrades and announces, the true goal, Calamity Sisk, is very close. Her allies nod, accepting the situation. Their strength must be preserved for the divine beast, not wasted on a senseless fight with those locked inside. While she prepares for the next move, she asks one of the present martial arts masters to watch for the creature's appearance. He grumbles, complaining that he is being used like a hunting dog, but the knight still responds by sliding a treasure chest nearby as a gift for those she holds captive. Their demands for release do not move. Hirsch ignores these pleas. The tracker points northwest, tracing a winding path already taken by the beast. The squad's sorcerers insist on teleporting directly to save time, and the plan, agreed upon that very night, is immediately approved to start the hunt sooner. Beneath their feet, an intricate magical circle flares up, first a flash, then a sharp glow floods everything around. The young man trapped inside the bars screams in despair for them to stop, but his voice drowns in the low hum that grows louder as the mana activates. In an instant, the knight and her squad vanish without a trace. Only silence and heavy iron prison bars remain. The prisoners stare blankly into the empty space around them. as if abandoned. Under the lock there is only a chest stand, the cold realization that they have been left behind. While he was locking himself within the magical barrier far from here, a fierce explosion thundered deep in the S-class dungeon. Renee effortlessly dealt with a whole pack of monsters, and every move she made was accompanied by a wave of destructive energy. She muttered that there was no chance for a real fight here, because this supposedly legendary dungeon turned out to be a complete disappointment up to the point where her expectations glowed, compared to that high F. After the clash, she did not quiet down and continued to sharply reproach, mocking how their captain stubbornly clings to his rules. Katarina, however, had no desire to joke. She coldly cut off, saying that such carelessness is exactly what leads a warrior to death. She ordered her subordinate not to lower vigilance under any circumstances, even when the danger seems minimal. The burden of that reprimand hung in the air like lead, momentarily knocking the younger warrior off track. She could not utter a single word. She sharply raised her gaze, stunned by the force radiating like a wave from her commander, who did not blink but stared straight and stubbornly without any concessions. To ease the tension, Sarachel stepped forward and gently made it clear that the captain's harsh words came not from anger but from genuine concern for their safety. Renee, however, did not give in. She crossed her arms over her chest and firmly declared that she was not some fragile child in need of constant pampering. In a moment so swift that the eye could not catch the movement, the air hissed sharply as the blade was drawn from its sheath and fixed in line, the tip of the sword hovering just a fraction of a second from Renee's throat, a cold reminder of the chasm between their strengths. Even the slightest step toward the strike would have deadly consequences. Holding the blade ready, the captain leaned forward and her voice dropped to a low, deadly serious tone. She spoke of many others she had seen in the last seconds, all of them miscalculated, overestimating their own strength and underestimating the enemy. Then she asked if they could truly imagine the bloody outcome that awaited their arrogance. A feeling of genuine power overwhelmed the group and silenced them. They froze as if the words had instantly vanished. Only now did everyone realize what was happening, and the truth of their situation finally settled in their minds. Katarina said plainly, along with her role as leader, the life of every fighter in their squad depends solely on her decisions, and her strictness is not a whim or disrespect, but a way to bear that burden. Her face softened for only a moment, then immediately changed to an expression of complete, unbreakable determination. She made it clear, every step she takes, every lecture, and every show of strength is subordinated to one single goal: that all members of her team return alive. She ends the stern lecture with a sharp question, whether all her words were fully conveyed and understood. Her subordinates freeze in stunned silence, and the force of the order that just sounded settles in the air like a heavy weight as they replay each of her words. The battle master sharply breaks the growing tension with a loud defensive shout, accusing their leader of contempt. She clings to her partner, hiding the trembling that has not yet passed behind a flash of bravado, and bluntly declares that she will never fall in battle, no matter how grim the warnings sound. The master wizard offers another perspective. Supposedly the knight's harshness is only a disguised, unspeakably awkward care. However, the rest do not back down from their doubts. They insist that their team was formed very recently and does not yet have strong bonds that would justify such frank, exhausting work with each individual. She continues, even smiling softly, urging them to look through the icy shell to the pure intention hidden inside. Her words reveal a painful need, that each of them survive. The phrases strike straight to the heart, and her companions freeze for a moment, confused as they try to grasp the truth in their commander's actions. As the squad marches through the grand, echoing corridors of the dungeon, the knight's thoughts are already fixed on the preemptive trial. She knows for sure, Sizku awaits them, a living flame, a true disaster. And although victory is not yet on either side, the need to pass this test overrides any fear of defeat. She turns to her team and holds a stern face, then issues the last solemn order: be ready. Someone responds immediately, and the whole pack confirms it in unison. The sorcerer, the martial arts warrior master, and the young beast folk roar their agreement. Their moods finally align as the future confrontation stands ahead. She again directs her gaze forward, and the features of her face harden, turning into a mask of unquestionable determination. Words are no longer needed. The very presence of the enemy begins to buzz in the air with heat, and this means their hardest trial begins. Suddenly the camera flashes with a blinding flame. The divine disaster reveals itself in all its horror. Suzaku, a giant bird of pure, swirling fire, screams a piercing challenge, and that cry shakes the very foundations of the dungeon, its power overwhelming the senses like a continuous wave. A fiery disaster looms over the battlefield, and Riene gathers the squad with tone, strikes. Her voice cuts through the continuous noise of the clash. She gives the order, everyone prepare, and in her gaze burns the same determination as the enemy's flame. While the battle rages elsewhere, the young man and his comrades are pushing with all their might against the huge sealed doors, but despite their combined effort, the doors do not budge an inch. He immediately realizes that brute force won't work. Harith barrier is surrounded by a magical aura that strengthens the seal. Noticing the obstacle, the wounded elven girl falls into despair. Her palms tremble convulsively as she clenches them tightly. The feeling of defeat seems to crush her chest. She gasps for breath, unable to believe what has happened. He does not take his eyes off her, and his chest is squeezed by a heavy truth. They no longer keep their promise. At this rate, their vow given to Lady Serena is not destined to be fulfilled, and this thought gnaws at his conscience. Yearning to understand her pain, he turns to her and asks if her anxiety arises from the danger looming over everyone in the forest. The girl Biskin intervenes and explains, the local monsters have become unnaturally evil, all because of the harmful influence of the firebird. The elf quietly confirms her words, for she knows well, peace will not return until the very cause of this trouble is cut off. After this, she utters a painful memory. In childhood, during a monster attack, she lost her parents. Only then does he truly realize how deeply fear resides within her. For her, this forest is not just a place, it is her entire world. A new fire flashes in her gaze. She declares that she is ready to risk her own life for the forest. It was the local people and Lady Serena herself who saved her when she was defenseless. Since then, she lives every day with a stubborn determination to repay them with protection. She lowers her gaze to the trembling hand, and her voice sounds heavy as if admitting her own helplessness. She feels that encountering such an obstacle is a pitiful failure, proof that she is powerless before what lies ahead. He immediately dispels her insecurity. Firmly and without hesitation, he says that she is truly incredible. His unexpected words penetrate her. Suddenly her eyes widen sharply, and the surprise becomes genuinely sincere. The young man continues to reflect on his own path. Once he spent days blaming the whole world for his stagnation. He admits that back then he was just a routine executor in the guild and dreamed of adventures that seemed like impossible dreams because he lacked the courage to act independently. He insists, unlike himself in the past, she did not wait. She took the initiative herself and agreed to the terrible mission that places the defeat of Sizek on her shoulders. He cannot contain his admiration. She reached this moment on her own 2 feet, and it looks simply incredible. Next to her is a girl from Ken from the Beast tribe who lifts her gaze. Her own progress was only possible thanks to the support given to her by those who were nearby. He pays tribute to his comrades for the push without which he could not have moved forward. He admits that his former self would have been paralyzed by fear and never reached this point. It is their presence, he says, that gives him the strength not to give up and to continue on his path. She freezes for a moment, confused, and asks herself if she can really be called one of these friends. Then he, looking warmly and convincingly, says, yes, she definitely belongs to this circling. It is her presence that gives him the strength to hold on in battle. He moves on to the list of their other companions, Cecilia, Luminia, and even Patri, and again emphasizes that he has long regarded her as a trusted ally and friend. The group stands together, and their bond further strengthens their common goal. He reaches out his hand to her and solemnly vows to become the support she lacks. He calls them to face divine calamity, Suzaku acting as a united front, and his determination echoes in the supportive smiles of friends standing behind him. He listens intently while Solon finishes her sincere plea speech. Her voice sounds quiet but steady as she voices the desire to stand beside them. He is greeted with a firm handshake as soon as he joins her circle. This gesture immediately raises joyful noise around, and everyone turns their eyes to the chest with valuables lying nearby. The gilded chest presses against them immediately behind. Heavy Barth's hand cannot reach, and they involuntarily wondered if it was there that the rare treasures promised for victory over the winged dragon without wings lay. As soon as they opened it, a whole bunch of peculiar things appeared to their eyes. A thick folio, several rolled scrolls, and glass bottles filled with shimmering liquids. When they turn over the things, they notice there is no weapon here. Instead, they come across a scroll that seems to enhance stats and a mysterious red elixir, but he does not relax, still waiting for a trick that may be hidden somewhere nearby. His eyes widen sharply in complete shock as he convulsively clutches the heavy folio. He realizes that this is the legendary combined volume of healing magica relics, so rare that he never even hoped to see a genuine copy. While he is mesmerized examining the find, Lumina hands Cecilia a scroll, hinting that it would probably suit a fighter on the front line better. She examines the gift and explains, the enhancement scrolls have 3 rarity levels: normal, high, and supreme. This particular supreme rank will give her a strong, though unpredictable, new technique. She freezes and stares intently at the scroll, anxiously breaking the silence with her thoughts. She must read every line aloud. The fool calms her, urging her not to hesitate and simply open the artifact. She takes a deep breath and unfolds the parchment. As soon as the seal breaks, dazzling light bursts forth from the ancient script. The glow intensifies into a blinding flash, swirling around her in a vortex of pure energy. She sharply exhales a scream. The force of the highest scroll pulses through her very being. When the magic fully integrates, the scroll vanishes into thin air, dissolving without a trace. Full explains, the power now lives within her, and from these words she understands that her might has probably grown sharply. After they absorb the power of the scroll, the two again turn their gaze to the rest of the treasures. She studies her own hands and frowns. The desired immediate effect did not occur. After this, she considers, although the cage did not provide a specific breakthrough, the new power still needs to be tested either on her adventure card or directly in the heat of battle. Nearby, Solon lifts a vial with a liquid shimmering with a rainbow glow and admits she has never seen anything like it. However, from the sheer incredible magical power alone, it becomes clear this is an item of colossal value. Realizing there is no escape from this trap, the company abandons any reckless attempts. But the fools insist to keep the mysterious elixir sealed until consulting Patra for a proper identification. He stands beside his comrades until the shimmering barrier that held them suddenly shatters into 1,000 crystal shards. The protective dome that confined them no longer exists, and now the group is shamelessly exposed to the open air. Next to him, the young shield-bearer abruptly shouts out in complete shock, "How did the barrier disappear so instantly?" He is frightened by the thought that the kidnapper might have suddenly changed their mind. He just freezes, staring intently and unable to utter a word, his mind spinning, searching for an explanation for this sudden turn. He listens to the words of the girl from the kingdom of beasts. Apparently, the one who cast the spell may no longer be needed, yet he still holds skepticism. By his logic, the knight's plan was precisely to block them and prevent approach, so her voluntary removal of the spell seems illogical. It turns out something went wrong on the other side of the wall. Realizing how serious everything is, he urges them forward, shouting that there is no time to delay. The team breaks into a run, heading toward the source of what happened before it becomes too late. Somewhere far away, the sacred knight is in full agony. She gasped for air in ragged, bloody breaths as her body collapsed to her knees. The battered and shattered armor barely held on her, and she struggled not to lose consciousness, fighting the unbearable weight of her own wounds. Despite her strength waning, she still swings and chops, clearing deadly shadows thickly spreading around with her blade. Each strike testifies only to her stubborn will, yet blood splatters on the cold stone floor more and more often. Her stubborn resistance is crushed by the terrible presence of the fire catastrophe. It looms over her broken body, menacingly poised. Lying helplessly on the ground, she watches as the gigantic feathered creature prepares to deliver the final, burning blow.